Chapter 422. When Yen Bugue brought people to the 100 Flowers Valley to challenge, many people had seen Yu Qianzhou's thousands of green flying swords. They were quite powerful. The strange whip that everyone was helpless against was defeated by his flying swords. Yen Cheng, who was in the middle stage of tribulation passing, was even killed by his flying swords. Now, a black flying sword had appeared. Since he could use it in this battle, it must be even more powerful. Currently, the situation of the battle had been turned around by the 4 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing. Once Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai used their flying swords, the 600 masked rogue cultivators immediately suffered heavy losses. As the leader, Yu Qianzhou couldn't wait any longer. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, thousands of flying swords covered the sky and covered the earth as they wrapped around him and directly pounced towards Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai. All the sects were shocked. This guy actually wanted to fight against 2 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing alone. He was a complete lunatic. The people of the supporting Immortal Island had an inseparable affection for Yu Qianzhou. When they saw this scene, they all shook their heads and remained silent. Osihai even sighed. The good seedling that he had taken a fancy to was probably going to die here. No one thought that Yu Qianzhou could survive the attacks of 2 experts in the late stage of tribulation passing. Bai Shan of the 4 clans turned around and sent a telepathic message. The disciples of the 4 clans quickly gathered and were ready to help as soon as the order was given. Seeing this, all the sects cursed inwardly. The 4 clans were probably going to help Yu Qianzhou. Hua Rui and Hua Yingyue of the Moon clan looked at each other and nodded slightly. Their attention was not on Yu Qianzhou, but on the 2 people in purple in the sky. The smile on the Allure Beauty's face disappeared. She raised her hand and stroked her hair. A few experts in the tribulation passing from the pink cult also took a step forward and waited for the order. "I'm coming," Yu Qianzhou roared. The flying sword swirled like snow as he waved his hand. With a flick of his finger, the flying swords pledged their loyalty to him. Hundreds of streaks of black light split into 2 groups and charged towards Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan at lightning speed. Yu Qianzhou was throwing caution to the wind. It was impossible for him to let the first batch of brothers who followed him into battle be annihilated. Now that his cultivation had just broken through to the middle stage of nascent soul, his ability to control his flying sword had once again increased. He had to fight with his life on the line. Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai had already noticed his movements. Seeing the flying swords flying towards them like rain, they instantly covered their bodies with protective stellar energy. The 2 of them were confident that with their cultivation, they could completely block Yu Qianzhou's attack. However, the 2 of them weren't completely at the mercy of the other party's attacks. One of them controlled the flying swords below to slaughter the masked rogue cultivators while the other struck out with a palm. The Daluo mountain-splitting palm of the Daluo sect instantly conjured 2 giant palm silhouettes to meet the 2 waves of sword rain. The flying sword was like a sharp arrow, and the palm shadow was like a bubble. When the 2 met, it was like a knife cutting through tofu. The palm energy was immediately broken by the flying sword. As expected, it could break through the stellar energy of a late-stage tribulation stage cultivator. Yu Qianzhou was invigorated, and his confidence was greatly boosted. He then controlled the flying sword to rapidly shoot towards the 2 Daluo sect consecrators. The hundreds of black flying swords that were protecting him also carried him as he charged towards them. "Oh no, there's something strange about these swords," Cui Zhaofan cried out involuntarily. "They can break through stellar energy. Let's go." Li Mengbai's expression changed. The 2 of them shouted at the same time. In order not to affect their speed, they instantly retracted their stellar energy and soared into the sky. The 2 flying swords that had caused the masked rogue cultivators to suffer greatly also immediately flashed into the sky, chasing after their masters. Without the threat of the 2 late-stage tribulation stage cultivators, the masked rogue cultivators had suffered heavy casualties, and there were only about 400 of them left. However, their long battle experience in Utopia was very effective. They calmly and quickly formed a team to counterattack the Daluo sect. Yu Qianzhou pounced towards the spot where the 2 late-stage tribulation stage cultivators had been standing. He looked down and saw that the number of casualties had reached a 1/3. He instantly felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. These were all his efforts over the years. He couldn't help but roar crazily, "Kill! Kill! Kill! Don't leave a single one alive! Kill them all! You 2 old bastards! Where do you think you're going? Give me your lives!" Yu Qianqiu's eyes immediately turned bloodshot. He pointed at the two people flying into the sky and shouted. Then, thousands of black flying swords carried him into the sky and chased after the two late-stage tribulation stage cultivators. The smell of desperation was very strong. When the masked rogue cultivators below saw that their leader had single-handedly defeated the two late-stage tribulation stage cultivators, they were instantly energized. They immediately followed their leader's orders to kill them all and started a frenzied massacre. There was no lack of intention to take revenge for their teammates. The various sects were shocked. Yu Qianqiu had actually scared away the two late-stage tribulation stage cultivators from the Daluo sect? Now, he was flying into the sky alone to continue his pursuit. He was really crazy. Oh my. After this battle, if Yu Qianqiu was still alive, even if he didn't have the cultivation of a late-stage tribulation stage cultivator, he would definitely be ranked among them. Not because of anything else but because of his strength. After the people of supporting Immortal Island recovered from their shock, they looked at each other and shook their heads with bitter smiles. Now, they understood that supporting Immortal Island had abandoned a disciple with the potential to reach the late-stage tribulation stage. Moreover, he had killed two late-stage tribulation stage cultivators while he was only at the nascent soul stage. Although it was hard to believe, it was the truth. Supporting Immortal Island had suffered a heavy loss. Yu Qianqiu had used the improved Guiyuan sword art to establish his might in the cultivation world several times. Could it be that the tens of thousands of cultivators of supporting Immortal Island were inferior to Yu Qianqiu? The research and improvement of the Guiyuan sword art could not be delayed. The higher-ups of supporting Immortal Island nodded firmly. Bai Shan and the others from the four major clans were also surprised, but they weren't too surprised. The disciple of the world's #1 expert was not someone to be trifled with. Everyone finally heaved a sigh of relief. The Allure Beauty looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was holding a sword and chasing after Yu Qianqiu, and her eyes lit up. She didn't expect such a scene to occur. This guy was really unfathomable and always exceeded her expectations. It seemed that her worries were unnecessary. Ziyi had no problem fighting Zhu Zhao alone. She believed that it wouldn't take long for her to succeed. However, Luo Kuan's participation immediately made Zhu Zhao feel better. It was also impossible for the two of them to defeat Ziyi. Putting aside the fact that Nong Zhu had trained her daughter, Nong Zhu's famous form displacement transposition technique in the cultivation world was not something that could be practiced for fun. Ziyi and Luo Kuan had a headache because Ziyi didn't fight them head-on. Relying on her strange body movement technique, she appeared and disappeared unpredictably. The two of them could only guard against her, and it was difficult for them to fight back effectively. Ziyi was originally worried about Yu Qianqiu's safety. At this time, when she saw Yu Qianqiu, a nascent soul stage cultivator, chasing after two cultivators at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage, she was shocked and attributed all the credit to Bai Chongqun. She admired Bai Chongqun more and more. She thought that the disciple taught by Senior Bai was really extraordinary. Without any worries for the time being, Ziyi was immediately stimulated by Yu Qianqiu to the point that it was as if she had been injected with chicken blood. She used the great art of displacement transposition perfectly, immediately forcing Luo Kuan and Zhu Zhao into an indescribably miserable state. The two of them had their backs against each other, and only then did they have one side of their defense reduced. Only then did they feel a little more relaxed. However, when they saw that Yu Qianqiu was also fighting one against two, the two of them didn't know what to say. Zhu Zhao was so regretful that his intestines turned green. In order to stand up for his disappointing nephew, he had dragged the entire Daluo sect down with him. Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai stopped high in the sky. With their cultivations, Yu Qianqiu naturally couldn't catch up. However, as the two of them were the highest echelons of the Daluo sect, they couldn't do that. If they really did that, the Daluo sect would be too ashamed to show their faces in public. Seeing that the two of them had stopped running and were preparing for battle, Yu Qianqiu also calmed down. He slowed down his speed and quickly set up his formation. Half of the flying swords were inserted outwards, densely distributed around his body, making him look like a hedgehog. He wasn't afraid of anything now, but he was afraid that the two cultivators at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage could use teleportation to ambush him. This ability to come and go without a trace was too terrifying. However, teleportation could only be used if there was space for them to move. Without the spatial crack that they used to teleport over, no matter how they tried to teleport, they would only be able to stop outside of his sword formation. After setting up his formation, Yu Qianqiu immediately felt more at ease. As long as he had a bit of buffer time, escaping would not be a problem. He immediately shouted, "Hand over your life." Yu Qianqiu commanded the remaining hundreds of flying swords to charge at the two of them. This guy kept asking the two of them to hand over their lives. The cultivators below were not deaf. Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai's faces turned ashen. They were probably angry out of humiliation. Cui Zhaofan stared at the pursuing Yu Qianqiu and sneered, "You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If you want to die, don't blame me for being impolite." With a point of his finger, the flying sword that was floating beside him moved according to his heart's desire. It spun in the air and suddenly created an illusionary shadow of a sword intent. The entire sword seemed to have expanded by a dozen times. With a whoosh, it pierced through the air. Its strong momentum caused visible ripples to form in the air as it charged straight at Yu Qianqiu. His attack when he was enraged was indeed extraordinary. Oh my! The final stage of the Crossing Calamity stage is indeed the final stage of the Crossing Calamity stage. Black Fire Flying Sword. I will be relying on you to gain face. Don't let me down. Yu Qianqiu made up his mind and pointed his finger at the sky as well. He shouted, "Kill!" 100 black rays flashed out and twisted into a flood dragon that soared into the sky. It wanted to compete with the heavens. It soared into the sky and faced the huge flying sword that was creating a huge ripple. The various sects below raised their heads and squinted their eyes to watch. They were speechless. It was hard to tell if Cui Zhaofan's profound cultivation had the upper hand or if Yu Qianqiu's black flying sword was sharper. Li Mengbai looked over with a solemn expression. It was really strange that the flying sword could break through stellar qi. If there was an accident, he did not mind being the laughingstock of two cultivators at the end of the Tribulation passing stage fighting against a nascent soul cultivator. The Da Luo sect disciples below had almost all died. Only the Tribulation passing stage cultivators were barely holding on. It seemed like they would not be able to hold on for much longer. None of the four of them could bear the crime of being completely wiped out. Moreover, Luo Kuan and Zhu Zhao were also barely holding on. He raised his hand and the flying sword beside him landed in his hand. He then clenched it tightly. As soon as the gigantic flying sword collided with the dense black sword shadows, the dense black shadows immediately disappeared into the gigantic sword, making an ear-piercing si sound. Cui Zhaofan, who was mentally connected to his flying sword, had a change of expression. The huge sword was instantly shattered. It could no longer withstand such a huge force. With a loud bang, it exploded into pieces in the air. Chapter 423. The black netherworld fire that even old Man Bai could not break through was indeed extraordinary. It destroyed the flying swords of the late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased. He immediately charged up while facing the flying swords. His aura was very arrogant. Li Mengbai snorted coldly. She waved her sword and a sharp light shot out. She then quickly slashed out more than 10 times. F***CK. Yu Qianqiu, who was rushing up, was instantly shocked. He realized that he was a little too excited. He only dreamed of defeating the late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators, but he might lose his life if he was not careful. He moved his sword horizontally, controlling hundreds of flying swords to meet the other's sharp sword light. The black flame flying swords were indeed powerful. Pu, they instantly destroyed more than 10 sharp sword lights. Yu Qianqiu's heart was beating rapidly. Just as he heaved a sigh of relief, he suddenly realized that Li Mengbai had disappeared from above. He saw a shadow appear from the corner of his eyes. The word, teleportation, immediately appeared in his mind. He was shocked again and hurriedly flew up on his sword. Running! Li Mengbai snorted coldly and shouted, "Stop him! Don't let him escape!" Cui Zhaofan's expression darkened. He summoned another sword. The sword from before could be considered a transcendent artifact, but it was destroyed just like that. Although he could not control so many flying swords at the same time like Yu Qianqiu, he could still take out a few spare flying swords from his storage pouch. With the previous lesson, he had learned his lesson. He no longer used his flying swords to fight against Yu Qianqiu. Just like Li Mengbai, he shot out a sword light every time he attacked. The two of them, one above the other, shot out a sword light while the other shot out a sword light. Immediately, Yu Qianqiu was forced into a corner. The two of them watched as he used his flying swords to surround himself like a porcupine. Such a strange arrangement. If it wasn't to guard against the two's teleportation, what else could it be? Since he had the confidence to use these flying swords to defend himself, there must be a reason. The two of them did not force their way through, but the sword lights they shot out became more and more frequent. If this continued, there would come a time when Yu Qianqiu would fail to block it. Of course, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't just sit there and wait to be beaten. He had plenty of flying swords anyway, and it was enough for each person to use a dozen or so to harass them. However, the speed of his flying swords couldn't keep up with the speed of the two people moving through the air. It was true that he could only harass them, but he couldn't cause any damage to them. Just like that, the three of them began to drag it out. You release sword light to harass me. I release flying swords to harass you. However, at this rate, with Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he might not be able to last as long as the two of them. However, Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan were feeling extremely anxious. There weren't many De Luo sect disciples left. If this were to continue, all of them would die. If Yu Qianqiu's subordinates were to kill all of them, they would be too ashamed to return to the De Luo sect. However, this Yu Qianqiu was like a porcupine, making it impossible for them to exert any force. No matter how high their cultivation was, they had to find a way to attack. Attacking with flying swords was impossible. The other party had as many flying swords as there were hairs on a cow, and all of them were terrifyingly sharp. They could cut through transcendent artifacts like vegetables, and even their astral energy and sword light could be disintegrated. Teleportation was also impossible to get close to, so there was no way to find an effective way to attack. It was hard to imagine how a single person could have so many sharp flying swords on him. It was simply illogical. The various sects below watched as the Da Luo sect disciples were almost completely wiped out. The few dozen mid-stage Tribulation Transcendence disciples were clenching their teeth and holding on, but under the combined attacks of the other party, they didn't dare to go all out. However, they had gained some experience. Against this group of masked rogue cultivators, the only thing they could do was to stick together and defend. If they tried to retaliate too much, the other party would immediately take advantage of them. Below them, there were many people with low cultivation, and very few people with high cultivation. The various sects looked up and saw that the situation was completely reversed. There were many people with high cultivation, and very few people with low cultivation. Two late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators took turns to trap Yu Qianqiu and attacked fiercely, but they couldn't do anything to him. Alright. On the other side, Ze was even better. She was fighting with fewer people against more people. One late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivator was actually trapping two late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators, and Luo Kuan and Zhu Zhao could only defend themselves. What made the various sects the most speechless was that Yu Qianqiu was obviously only at the nascent soul stage. He even needed to step on a sword to fly. Yet, he was fighting with two late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators. This completely overturned everyone's perception. However, everyone could see that it wasn't that Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai weren't Yu Qianqiu's opponents. It was all because the black flying swords were too powerful, and the two of them were afraid to attack. If Yu Qianqiu dared to abandon the black flying swords, either one of them would be able to kill him with a single slap. How could they let him jump around in the sky for so long? It was time-consuming and embarrassing. Keep an eye on him. I'll go deal with the rogue cultivators below, Li Mengbai said to Cui Zhaofan. She felt that there was no need to waste the two of them here. Even if there was only one of them, they wouldn't be able to do anything to each other. It would be a waste for her to waste time here. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he was shocked. If that guy went down, no one in the special forces would be able to resist him. If they fought head-on, none of them would be a match for a late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivator. He immediately shouted, "Nebula Water Art." He casually came up with a frightening name. As expected, it caused the two of them to be shocked at the same time. They instantly thought that this guy seemed to have two special skills that he hadn't used yet. They immediately became vigilant. Neither of them left. The Nebula Fire Art was a famous name that the entire cultivation world had heard of. It was said that no one had been able to gain an advantage over that fire art. When Luo Qingtian returned to De Luo sect after he was injured, he once told the higher-ups of De Luo sect that Yu Qianqiu's fire art was extremely overbearing. Once he came into contact with it, he wouldn't be able to withstand it even if he hid within his protective qi. He was forced to self-destruct his protective chi to escape. As for the nebula water art, this was the first time they had heard of it. However, it was an indisputable fact that Yu Qianqiu could indeed control water to fight. Even though he had only used it once, many people had witnessed it with their own eyes. Moreover, the only time it was used was when the Daluo sect master, Luo Qingtian, tried it. Luo Qingtian tasted Yu Qianqiu's water and fire secret arts alone, and no one knew if it was a blessing or a curse. Now that the nebula water art had suddenly appeared, not only did it cause Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan to become vigilant, even the various sects below them became interested. Everyone knew that the duel between Yu Qianqiu and Luo Qingtian was on the river that day, so it was needless to say that there was water. Could it be that the water conjuration art could appear out of thin air like the fire conjuration art? Everyone subconsciously looked at the vast sea not far away. Yu Qianqiu stuffed 2 big handfuls of qi replenishing pills into his mouth and chewed them like candy. In the end, the sects waited for a long time, but they didn't find anything unusual. The people above them were still hammering away, hitting each other. They couldn't hit each other, and neither could they hit each other. However, 2 more screams came from below. 2 Daluo sect disciples had made a mistake, and the masked loose cultivator took advantage of the gap and killed them on the spot. Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan's expressions changed at the same time. The latter said to the former in a low voice, "This guy is stalling for time. You go down there. Leave this to me." Li Mengbai fiercely slashed out a sword ray. Just as she was about to go down, she suddenly realized that something was wrong with her surroundings. It was slightly hazy, and the air instantly became abnormally moist. The 2 of them said at the same time, "Nebula water art?" The moment these words came out, it immediately attracted the attention of the various sects below. Instantly, their eyes widened like eggs, and their heads tilted up and down for a long time. However, they couldn't find a single drop of water. Are our eyes playing tricks on us, or are those 2 guys hallucinating? The various sects looked at each other, and all shook their heads to indicate that they didn't see anything. Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan's nerves tensed up for a long time. They realized that the surrounding air was indeed moist, but there was no water. The 2 of them simultaneously stared at Yu Qianqiu, only to see that this guy had a serious expression on his face. He was completely focused on dealing with the sword rays that the 2 of them had released. The 2 of them immediately felt like they had been tricked. Cui Zhaofan gritted his teeth and said, "Go. A mere water art won't be able to do anything to me. Yu Qianqiu, wait for me to kill all of them down there, then I'll deal with." Li Mengbai's words came to an abrupt halt. Yu Qianqiu clenched his fists, and immediately, a few water dragons coiled around his arms, swimming around in the air. Yu Qianqiu also knew that he could only drag things out for a while, but not forever. It was time to give it his all. Old Man Bai had once said that if one used it well, they would be invincible. He then shouted, "Then I'll let you see my nebula water art." With a shake of his arms, boundless water surged out, and the air instantly became bright. Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan realized that they were instantly trapped in the water, and the water was desperately trying to enter their orifices. The 2 of them were shocked, and immediately released their stellar energy to protect their bodies. The various sects below were in an uproar. A large area of water had really appeared out of nowhere, covering a radius of a few hundred meters. Everyone had originally thought that he was going to borrow the water of the Eastern Sea. Yu Qianqiu was in the water, and immediately realized the beauty of this technique. It was as if the radius of a few hundred meters was under his control. Even if he closed his eyes, he would be able to clearly see the actions of his 2 opponents. It seemed like the benefits of having a higher cultivation level were not small. This was wonderful. Yu Qianqiu chuckled, and the surrounding water quickly became turbulent. Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan immediately realized that they could not see the movements around them at all. They instantly felt that something was wrong, and quickly released their divine senses. Ah! The moment the 2 of them released their divine senses, they immediately felt as if they were being pierced by a group of things. The feedback was not a piercing pain, but an unforgettable burning pain. The pain penetrated into their souls, and no matter how high their cultivation levels were, they could not help but let out a miserable howl. The people below were also unable to see the movements above them because of the turbulence of the water. Suddenly, they heard 2 miserable howls, and immediately determined that it was Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that Yu Qianqiu had already succeeded? Luo Kuan and Zhu Zhao clenched their teeth and defended with all their might. When they suddenly heard these two miserable howls, they immediately felt their limbs go numb. The two of them could naturally tell whose voice it was. For a cultivator at the final stage of the tribulation to let out such a miserable howl, the result was unimaginable. Immediately, the two of them relaxed their defense. Hearing this, Ze became even more excited, and took the opportunity to attack ferociously. Zhu Zhao was careless for a moment, and the bamboo immediately pierced a hole through his thigh. Just as blood spurted out, he circulated his energy to stop it. Zhu Zhao was really stubborn. He was afraid that he would affect Luo Kuan, so he forcefully endured and did not make a sound. Instead, he became even more alert and defended with all his might. Outsiders might not know what was going on over at Yu Qianqiu's side, but he knew that Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai's divine senses had already been severely injured by his black flame-flying swords. This time, it was not like the time when he fought with Luo Qingtian, where he only used a finger of black flame to lightly touch them. Instead, hundreds of flying swords rushed into their divine senses and messed them up. It was definitely enough to make them suffer. Seizing the opportunity, hundreds of flying swords shot towards the two of them. However, since Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai could cultivate to the final stage of the tribulation, they were not to be trifled with. How could they hesitate after suffering such an attack? Almost at the same time, they instinctively exploded their protective auras. Boom, boom! Two loud sounds rang out like thunder. The water clouds within a radius of a few hundred meters in the sky exploded. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt dizzy from such a loud sound. The water clouds lost control and all turned into flowing water, splashing into the sea. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and regained his senses. His ears were still ringing, but he immediately realized that the two of them were staring at him like tigers watching their prey. He was immediately shocked, and quickly summoned back the black flame-flying swords to protect himself. However, what surprised him was that the two of them were staring at him with pale faces, but they did not make any movements. Yu Qianqiu's face was filled with suspicion, but he did not dare to act rashly. He did not know what the two of them were up to. Moreover, his ears were still ringing, so it was better for him to slow down. Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai, on the other hand, were suffering in silence. Their divine senses had been severely damaged. Other than their natal primordial spirits, the divine senses that could be released had already been destroyed by Yu Qianqiu. The remaining divine senses were pitifully little, and they had almost become idiots due to the damage to their divine senses. Now, the two of them were extremely mentally exhausted, and they were almost in a state of drowsiness. How could they still have the energy to continue wasting time with Yu Qianqiu? This symptom made the two of them recall what Luo Qingtian had said. Back when he was fighting with Yu Qianqiu, his divine sense was suddenly injured. Although the injury wasn't serious, that kind of heart-wrenching pain was simply unforgettable. It almost made people want to die instantly. Now that he thought about it, the symptoms were exactly the same as what Luo Qingtian had said. It was just that the degree of damage to their divine senses was much more severe than Luo Qingtian's. The three of them continued wasting time in the air. Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan took the opportunity to rest, hoping to recover some of the damaged divine senses. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, was used to scheming against others. He was suspicious and afraid that others would scheme against him, so he decided to observe first. He did not want to act rashly. Because of his suspicious nature, he had lost a great opportunity for nothing. The spectators below were puzzled. The battle had already reached this stage, so what was there to hesitate about? They were not going to persuade him anymore. Just end the battle quickly and end it quickly. What was the point of continuing to waste time? At this moment, a few disciples ran over from the small town. They quickly went to the spectator sects and reported something to the people in charge. The expressions of the people in charge of the Righteous Path's Fuxian Island, Moon Clan, Sword Clan, and Heartless Palace all changed. They looked at Yu Qianqiu, Li Mengbai, and the others who were in a stalemate in the air. The people of the four sects exchanged glances and nodded. They shouted in unison, "Stop!" As soon as they shouted, more than 10 experts in the final stage of the Tribulation realm shot out from the four sects and blocked between Yu Qianqiu and the other two. Yu Qianqiu quickly looked around and squinted his eyes. He said in an extremely cold tone, "What? Could it be that the Righteous Path is colluding to deal with me?" Chapter 424. The movement of the righteous immediately alerted the demonic sections. Although they were all in the Cultivation Alliance, there was still a division between righteous and demonic sections. It was best if they didn't suffer any losses. There was no need to say anything. The demonic sects exchanged glances, and a dozen late-stage tribulation passing experts soared into the sky. The righteous sects, including Daluo sect, had 5 sections. The demonic sects also had 5 sections. They stood in the sky. Niu Sen of 10,000 demons said expressionlessly, "The matter of Yu Qianchou and Daluo sect has troubled you all. Lu Qing, what is the meaning of this?" Lu Qing was the consecrator of Fuxian Island. He waved his hand and said, "Niu Sen, don't misunderstand. Daluo sect sent a message to the 4 sects, asking us to stop this fight. We just received the sect master's decree, and we don't have any other intentions." The demonic sects didn't say anything. They believed this. Daluo sect must have noticed that the situation was bad and sent a message back to the sect. They didn't stop it at first, probably thinking that they would gain an advantage. Who knew that they would be at a disadvantage? Daluo sect couldn't send people over, so they sent a message to the 4 sects, asking them to send a decree to the people in Wanghai town. "Why didn't you stop it earlier? Why now?" Yu Qianchou sneered. He was a smart person, and could see through the trick at a glance. "We don't know about that. After receiving the decree from the sect, we immediately came here," Lu Qing said. Niu Sen sized up Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan. Suddenly, he looked at Yu Qianchou with a strange expression. He thought to himself, "Those 2 are clearly showing signs of exhaustion. I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to make a move. This brat is famous for not being at a disadvantage. Why would he give up such a great opportunity? Strange." He didn't think about it. With Yu Qianchou's current cultivation, he couldn't see through the late-stage tribulation passing experts. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so lucky. He would definitely pounce on them and slaughter them. After the group of cultivators at the end of the tribulation transcendent stage looked at Li Mengbai and Cui Zhaofan, they seemed to be deep in thought. They all stared at Yu Qianchou in silence. No one had revealed the truth. It all depended on Yu Qianchou's decision. Yu Qianchou was in the middle of a group of people at the end of the tribulation transcendent stage. When he saw everyone looking at him with a strange expression, Yu Qianchou immediately felt the pressure on him increase. He looked at Purple Dress and realized that it would be difficult for him to succeed in a short period of time. It was the same for the special forces below. "Since none of you are speaking, then let's just waste time." Yu Qianchou was on high alert. In any case, Purple Dress and the special battle team below them had the upper hand. If he could buy more time, he might be able to kill a few of them. It would be even better if he could kill one at the end of the tribulation stage. He wanted to waste time, but the righteous sects did not want to waste time with him. Everyone had come under the sect leader's decree. Afterwards, they would have to report the completion of the task. Lu Qing of Supporting Immortal Island said, "Yu Qianchou, tell your people to stop. Now is the time to unite against the outsiders. Why must you kill them all? Isn't it better to save energy to deal with the outsiders?" With so many powerful people gathered, Yu Qianchou knew that he could not delay any longer. He curled his lips unwillingly and said, "Tell the people from Daluo sect to stop first. Once they stop, my people will naturally stop as well." Lu Qing looked down and frowned. He said, "The people from Daluo sect are defending, and your people are attacking. How can you tell the people from Daluo sect to stop first? If they stop, isn't it the same as seeking death?" Yu Qianchou was stunned. He looked down and realized that it was indeed the case. If the people from Daluo sect stopped, the special battle team would instantly slaughter them all. He thought that it was a pity, but there was nothing he could do about it. There was a group of powerful people here. Then he shouted, "Purple Dress, come back, stop fighting." When Purple Dress heard this, she immediately recalled her purple bamboo and teleported to Yu Qianchou's side. She said with a surprised expression, "Why are you stopping? Give me another half an hour and I'll definitely kill those 2. She didn't look like she was satisfied with the fight. The various sects were speechless. They did not expect this woman to be so belligerent. Yu Qianchou said, "Go back down." Z-Dress had no choice but to follow him back to the ground. "Stop attacking and prepare for battle." With Yu Qianchou's order, Even if the special battle team had doubts, they would not ask them out loud like Z-Dress. They immediately teleported back, but they were still on guard. The people from Daluo sect were also huddled together, not daring to relax. Clearly, they were afraid of being beaten up. The people from the various sects in the final phase of Tribulation Transcendence also teleported down. They stood between the two sides to prevent them from accidentally fighting again. Luo Kuan and Zhu Zhao carried Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai back to Daluo sect's side. Luo Kuan said in a low voice, "Stop fighting." Only then did the people from Daluo sect believe that it was over. They all relaxed as if they had just survived a disaster. Especially Zhu Xianxian, who was hiding in the middle of a few dozen people. He was still in shock. Of all the people in the early phase of Tribulation Transcendence, he was the only one who survived. Fortunately, a group of people had been protecting him for Zhu Zhao's sake. The Allure Beauty leisurely walked over. Suddenly, she noticed that Yu Qianchou was gritting his teeth. She could not help but ask, "What's wrong?" "I was tricked." Yu Qianchou stared at the pale-faced Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai who were being supported by two disciples. Only now did he realize that those two fellows had already reached such a stage. Just now, they were barely holding on, but he had wasted such a good opportunity. Now that he understood, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. This was too vexing. The people in the final phase of Tribulation Transcendence in the middle naturally understood what he meant, but they all pretended as if nothing had happened. In their hearts, they were also sighing at how lucky Cui Zhaofan and Li Mengbai were. To be able to survive this guy's attack was truly a miracle. Daluo sect. Please return first. Lu Qing cupped his hands at Luo Kuan. Luo Kuan's face was ashen as he returned the greeting. Then, he ordered his disciples to collect the corpses of the dead disciples. Not long after, there were only 200 corpses of the special forces left on the plaza. When the people in the final phase of Tribulation Transcendence saw Yu Qianchou staring at the corpses on the ground with twitching expressions, they exchanged glances and silently dispersed. There was nothing left for them to do here. The 400 or so special forces who were still alive remained silent. Ziyi's face was also filled with solemnity. The Allure Beauty's gaze shifted to Yu Qianchou. Seeing that his face was flushed red, and the veins on his neck could already be seen bulging, it was clear that he was extremely angry. "Collect the corpses of our brothers onto the fourth flying artifact," Yu Qianchou said word by word. The special forces dispersed. They silently picked up their comrades and quietly sent them onto the fourth flying artifact. The onlookers from the various sects looked at these masked rogue cultivators with admiration. Although there were only about 400 people left, almost all of them had died at the hands of the two cultivators in the final phase of Tribulation Transcendence. The Da Luo sect had more than 1,000 people, and many of them were in the Tribulation Transcendence stage. However, almost all of them had been killed by these people, leaving only a few dozen alive. Yu Qianchou silently walked toward the fourth flying artifact. Ziyi and the Allure Beauty followed behind him. However, when they were about to reach the cabin door, a group of masked rogue cultivators suddenly blocked their way, separating the two women from Yu Qianchou. Yu Qianchou didn't even turn his head, as if he didn't know anything. He walked in without even looking back. Only the two captains followed him in, and then the cabin door immediately closed. "Why did you stop us?" The Allure Beauty looked at the group of masked people in front of her and asked. "The mister wants to send the dead brothers home. Please don't disturb him," the person in front said indifferently. The Allure Beauty and Ziyi looked at each other, their faces filled with confusion. Inside the cabin, Yu Qianchou looked at the over 200 corpses on the cabin's board without any expression on his face. He extended his palm and said indifferently, "Go back. Go back to Utopia and rest in peace. I will use the entire Daluo sect as a sacrifice for you." He didn't say anything else. He released his divine senses, and the over 200 corpses instantly disappeared. In Utopia's military camp, after Guan Yu received the notice, he had already gathered everyone. Close to 10,000 people were waiting quietly. When over 200 corpses appeared, Guan Yu waved his hand, and a group of people came out. They silently removed the masked robes with the words "Rogue Cultivator" embroidered on them and helped them change into Utopia's attire. Everyone bowed silently. After bowing, Guan Yu shouted, "Hong Qi, Zhang Peng, and Gu Qingyun, step forward." After the three of them came to the other side, he continued, These 200 Special Forces members were sacrificed in an intense battle outside. The leader has specially requested for the three of you to personally give them a proper burial. Can you do it? Yes. The three of them said in unison. Guan Yu waved his hand. Carry it out immediately. Yu Qianzhou and the two team leaders were silent for a long time before they opened the cabin door and walked out. When they saw everyone again, they had already regained their composure. After putting away the two flying artifacts, they ordered all the team members to return to the remaining four. I'm going back, the Allure Beauty suddenly said to the two of them with a smile. Yu Qianzhou and Ziyi looked at each other and asked in surprise, Go back where? I can't help you much even if I stay by your side. Of course I have to go back, the Allure Beauty said and nodded to the two of them. Then, she turned around and left. Her smile was slightly bitter. She originally thought that she would be of great help if she stayed by Yu Qianzhou's side. However, during the battle just now, she realized that Ziyi could not only fight against two cultivators in the late stage of the Crossing Calamity stage, but even Yu Qianzhou could fight against two cultivators in the late stage of the Crossing Calamity stage alone. She immediately realized to her dismay that she was so useless. The members of the Pink Sect, who were not far away, quickly came to her. When they were a few meters away from her, they all bowed and said, Greetings, Sect Leader. The Allure Beauty raised her hand to indicate that there was no need to be so polite. Then, she turned around and smiled at the two of them. Then, she left under the welcome of the Pink Sect members. Ziyi was surprised and said, Isn't she the palace master of the illusion palace that was wiped out? How did she become the sect leader? It's called the west side is bright when the east side is dark. You don't understand, Yu Qianzhou replied casually. He didn't think that the Enchantress of 100 Charm would announce his identity so openly. Ziyi's pretty face immediately turned cold when she heard him say that she didn't understand. The onlookers were shocked. They did not expect the Allure Beauty to be the sect leader of the Pink Sect, which was ranked 10th in the demonic path. Then, many people from the various sects left quickly. Obviously, they were in a hurry to report this important news to their sections. Soon, a disciple of the Supporting Immortals Island flew over on his sword. He bowed to Yu Qianzhou and said, Sir, the Cultivation Alliance has something to discuss. Please go there quickly. From the way he looked at Yu Qianzhou, it could be seen that he had already regarded Yu Qianzhou as an extraordinary figure. After all, Yu Qianzhou was an expert who could defeat two experts at the end of the Crossing Calamity stage by himself. And he was from the Supporting Immortals Island. Do you know what it is? Yu Qianzhou asked. The disciple replied honestly, It seems to be a discussion about attacking Wuji Island. I don't know the specifics. Yu Qianzhou frowned and waved his hand. Lead the way. A flying sword flew out of his sleeve and carried him. The disciple hurriedly led the two of them into the town on his flying sword. From the sky, the three of them entered the largest house in Wanghai town. It was probably the house of a rich family. The back garden was very spacious, and there were already many people there. As soon as Yu Qianzhou arrived, everyone's eyes focused on him. The previous battle had already qualified him to be on equal footing with everyone present. Yu Qianzhou's eyes met with Luo Kuan's from the Daluo sect. The two of them looked at each other and looked away. However, Yu Qianzhou stared at Zhu Xianxian for a while, which made the latter feel a little creeped out. A familiar body fragrance assailed his nose. Yu Qianzhou turned his head and was shocked to find Allure Beauty beside him. She was smiling at him without saying a word. He immediately remembered that she was now the leader of the Pink Sect. Naturally, she was qualified to be here. Ziyi saw Allure Beauty and approached her happily. After the various sects whispered to each other, they all nodded at Quan Deming from the Supporting Immortals Island. Quan Deming stood up and cupped his hands. Everyone, we were prepared to attack Wuji Island and wipe them out in one fell swoop. Now, reinforcements from Wuji Island are still rushing over. If we wait any longer, it will be even more disadvantageous for us. After asking for the opinions of the various sects, we felt that it was urgent. Now, we have gathered everyone here to ask if there are any objections. There is nothing wrong with going according to the previous arrangements, but... Wen Zhongping from the Blood Demon Palace walked out and said, There is an accident now. Almost all the disciples from the Daluo sect were killed. It is indeed inappropriate to go according to the previous arrangements. Zhu Xianxian immediately replied, You don't have to worry about that. Our sect's disciples are already on the way. They will arrive before sunrise tomorrow. Some of the smaller sects were secretly shocked. The large sects were indeed large sections. They lost so many people, and they made up for it just like that. Hee. That is naturally good. However, there is something that I need Elder Zhu to explain, Wen Zhongping said with a smile. Humph. What do I need to explain to you? Zhu Xianxian said disdainfully. One was the second largest sect of the righteous path, and the other was the second largest sect of the demonic path. It was just like the supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons. When they met their corresponding opponents, they would fight each other to determine who was better. It had almost become a habit. Wen Zhongping walked up to him and said with a smile, previously, many sects listened to Elder Zhu's opinion and gathered more than 60 million superior-grade spirit stones. Now that we don't have the people and we can't get the money back, Elder Zhu has to give us an explanation. 60 million superior-grade spirit stones is not a small number. Wen Zhongping, why are you bringing this up now? No one is forcing your Blood Demon Palace to hand over the money. Why are you asking me for an explanation? What nonsense! As Zhu Xianxian argued, he subconsciously glanced at Yu Qianchou. Yu Qianchou naturally understood what was going on with the 60 million, but he obediently stood to the side and turned a deaf ear to Zhu Xianxian's words. The eyes of the sects that had paid up immediately lit up. At this point, which sect would dare ask Yu Qianchou for money or manpower? Everyone was already prepared for misfortune. However, if they took advantage of the Daluo sect's weakness and used Yu Qianchou's presence to force the Daluo sect to cough up the money, wouldn't that be even better? That's right. Elder Zhu, you were the one who suggested it, and we raised the money according to your suggestion. Now, you should at least say something about giving us people or returning our money. You can't let us lose both our people and our money. Yuan Xueqi of the Hexapath Demon Sect stepped forward. Walking up to Wen Zhongping's side, the two exchanged a smile. Wen Zhongping cupped his hands and said, Old Brother Yuan's words are reasonable. You should at least give us an explanation. That's right. You should at least give us an explanation. At least 5 or 6 sects joined in on the commotion, most of them from the demonic path. Even if the righteous path wanted to take back the money, they had no choice but to swallow their anger. After all, they were all from the righteous path, and as long as the demonic path caused a ruckus, they would definitely get their money back. Luo Kuan was resting with his eyes closed, but from the twitching of his cheeks, it was clear that he wasn't calm at all. Zhu Xianxian pointed at the two of them and said angrily, At that time, were the two of you fighting for more money and trying to get more people? Now you're asking me for an explanation? Go find whoever took the money. Go find whoever has the hostage. Go find whoever has him. What a glib tongue. You're able to push the blame away so quickly. Wen Zhongping sneered. Your Daluo sect killed more than 200 people. Who are we going to ask for the people? Are we going to ask the legendary Emperor of the Netherworld? We don't have the ability to find him. Why don't you go ask him for us? Everyone deliberately avoided Yu Qianchou because they wanted to drag the Daluo sect into this. Zhu Xianxian suddenly shouted, The people are Yu Qianchou's men, and the money is also Yu Qianchou's. Go find him if you have the ability. Everyone was silent. They didn't expect him to be so unafraid of pressure and drag Yu Qianchou into this at this time. Everyone stared at Yu Qianchou. As expected, Yu Qianchou's eyelids slowly opened, and he stared at Zhu Xianxian. Surnamed Zhu, what money did I take from you? Who do I have in my hands? Are you purposely picking a fight with me again? Do you really think that I won't dare to kill you because there are so many people here? Zhu Xianxian looked at Luo Kuan, who was staring at him, and he felt sad. He knew that after this matter, he probably wouldn't be able to be the external manager of the Daluo sect anymore. He decided to say, Yu Qianchou, to tell you the truth, the Cultivation Alliance's decree to summon 600 itinerant cultivators and pay more than 60 million upper-grade spirit stones was actually pooled together by the sections. The purpose was to divide the 600 Tribulation stage cultivators. The sects were speechless. Wen Zhongping and Yuan Zhoukui's expressions twitched. They knew that things were not going well. Yu Qianchou chuckled, looked around at everyone, and said, So there is such a thing. This is the first time I've heard of it. I don't know which sects paid to divide up my people. Why don't you all come out? I want to see who is scheming against me behind my back. He said it was the first time he had heard of it, but who would believe him?
The sects that were making a ruckus just now all turned their heads to the side, as if they had never heard of it before.
The people from Supporting Immortal Island looked at this disciple from Supporting Immortal Island, and they found it hard to describe. Chapter 425. One person intimidated the Cultivation Alliance. It wasn't that the sects were afraid of him, but at least no one dared to openly oppose him. Strength determined status. This was something that everyone was well aware of. If Yu Qianzhou's side had lost the previous battle, the sects would have forced him to cough up 60 million spirit stones, and that would have been a light punishment. There were probably a lot of people who wanted to get rid of him. Yu Qianzhou, it's not like anyone is scheming against you. Everyone is willing to fork out money because they want some benefits. Otherwise, the sects wouldn't throw away the spirit stones they've worked so hard to save. But you've also suffered heavy losses. We're all members of the Cultivation Alliance, so it's not right to ask for anything from you. Forget it, the Blood Demon Palace won't bring this up again. Wen Zhongping waved his hand generously and returned to the Blood Demon Palace's side as if nothing had happened. Hearing this, Zhu Xianxian was so angry that he nearly crushed his own teeth. Did the Daluo sect not suffer heavy losses? Did the Daluo sect not belong to the Alliance of Cultivators? Did the Daluo sect have to ask for something from the Alliance of Cultivators? He was angry, but he also understood that in the cultivation world, there were always superfluous things. Sending help in a snowy weather was nonsense. As long as there were benefits to be gained, there would be endless cases of people taking advantage of the situation. If it were someone else, the Daluo sect would have done the same. In the cultivation world, not protecting one's own interests was the same as cutting off one's own path to survival. The Blood Demon Palace has already set an example. Can the Hexapath Demon sect still be a villain? Yuan Xueqi laughed and walked back, waving his hand as he walked.
This matter is over.
The other sects didn't say anything either. It was as if doing something like this was normal. No one would feel embarrassed. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't for personal benefits. They were fighting for the entire sect. What was there to be embarrassed about? Luo Kuan's face was ashen. Everyone in the Daluo sect was silent, having experienced the fickleness of the world. As the second largest sect of the righteous path, once they lost their power, they were still worthless. None of them were good. Yu Qianzhou sneered. Quan Deming of the Supporting Immortal Island coughed and looked around at the crowd. Since there are no other opinions, when the reinforcements from the Daluo sect arrive tomorrow, the 263 sects of the Cultivation Alliance will coordinate according to the original plan and strive to annihilate the Wuji Island in one fell swoop, eliminating a major threat to the Chinese cultivation world. While everyone was nodding in agreement, someone suddenly said, Elder Quan, if the foreign cultivators of the Limitless Island are defeated, it's more likely that they will flee to the south. My sword sect leads the 36 sects, and we defend the south. Although there are many people in the 36 sects, there aren't many people with profound cultivation bases. In order to prevent any accidents, how about this? Wasn't Yu Qianzhou and the other rogue cultivators not included in the original plan? Why don't you coordinate with us to guard the south as well? This way, I'm sure it'll be much safer. When everyone heard this, they looked over and saw Duan Tianhua of the sword sect making his plans. Only then did everyone remember that the combat strength of Yu Qianzhou's subordinates was obvious to all. They were extremely powerful. As long as the other side didn't send a late-stage tribulation passing expert, the remaining 400 people should have no problem dealing with 1,000 or 2,000 people. His words woke everyone up from their dreams, and the various sects immediately became active. The sword sect, which was ranked 4th among the righteous sects, had jumped out. How could the Hexapath demonic sect, which was ranked 4th among the demonic sects, let it play a one-man show? Putting the demonic sect's face aside, they couldn't let go of such a great benefit. Yuan Xueqi chuckled and said, Duan Tianhua, you're wrong. In my opinion, the Wuji Island is just a motley crew. Once they lose, it's unlikely that they will flee to the south. Think about it, the Supporting Immortal Island is in the south with tens of thousands of disciples and experts. If they flee to the south, they will definitely be worried about being attacked by the Supporting Immortal Island. Therefore, it's unlikely that they will flee to the south. Yuan Xueqi, according to what you said, do you think they will give up what's close at hand and go to the east? Duan Tianhua sneered with disdain. That's right. Once they lose, they will most likely take a detour to the east. Yuan Zhokue gestured to the crowd and said, "If we go south, even if we pass through the supporting immortal island, we will reach the vast demon ghost domain. Do you think that the motley crew of Everlasting Island can cross the demon ghost domain and go back? That should be impossible." Speaking of the demon domain, Duan Tianbo was stunned. Even he didn't believe that anyone could cross the demon domain. Since he couldn't find any reason to refute, he could only look at Yuan Zhokue with a sullen face and continue. Fleeing to the west is the hinterland of the Chinese cultivation world. Not to mention the front line of defense. If you go deeper, you'll find sentries everywhere. Once you're defeated, the sects entrenched there won't let you off easily. There's no need to mention the north. That's the closest route for them to escape. That's why we gathered our strongest forces to attack from the north. That's why the north isn't suitable for them to escape. After saying that, Yuan Zhokue hugged his stomach and looked at everyone. He laughed and said, "In that case, we don't have to worry about the south, west, and north. The place that we need to focus on is the east. That's why I feel that Yu Qianqiu and the other wandering cultivators should coordinate with us to defend the east. That way, we won't be able to block them all, but we can at least reduce the number of fish that slip through the net." The debate was well-founded and the demonic sects cheered, while the righteous sects looked inferior in comparison. The six-path demonic sect's late-stage tribulation transcendence revered elders slightly nodded and looked at Yuan Zhokue with praise. Yuan Zhokue slightly bowed to the elders and retreated. He seemed to be quite proud of himself. The Daluo sect's Luo Kuan glanced coldly at Zhu Xianxian. He had also heard that Yuan Zhokue and Yu Qianqiu had almost fought in the 100-Flower Valley. However, Yuan Zhokue had expressed goodwill toward Yu Qianqiu several times, and after that, he and Yu Qianqiu had gotten along peacefully. How could he be like this fellow who couldn't distinguish the severity of the situation? When Luo Kuan compared the two sides, he couldn't help but feel sick in his heart. They were both external managers of their sects, but the disparity between them wasn't small. Mai De Luo sect simply picked a pig to be the manager. The Allure Beauty glanced at Yu Qianqiu, only to see him crossing his arms in front of his chest. Although this matter involved him, he didn't say a word. Half of his eyebrows were raised, and it seemed like the cold smile on his face never stopped. Luo Kuan couldn't help but shake his head. These people's words were better than singing. Could it be that Yu Qianqiu was that good of a manager? If that was the case, then he wouldn't be Yu Qianqiu. Quan Deming looked at the various sects inquiringly. Seeing that no one said anything, he nodded and said, "Since that's the case, all wandering cultivators will return to the east." Yuan Zhokue immediately beamed with joy as he looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile that said, "We're on the same side now." Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would greet him with a face full of ridicule? Yuan Zhokue couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. This fellow was too daring. Who did he learn this from? Yuan Zhokue was really afraid that Yu Qianqiu would do something bad at the critical moment. "Yu Qianqiu, do you have any objections?" Yuan Zhokue had no choice but to ask in advance so that no one would stab him in the back. When the various sects heard this, they looked at Yu Qianqiu and found that this fellow's indifferent attitude was really thought-provoking. The sword sect's Duan Tianbo was instantly amused. Or rather, he was gloating. Who could make this fellow's decision? As expected, Yu Qianqiu looked Yuan Zhokue up and down and said in a strange tone, "You're asking me what opinions I have? You all turned a blind eye to me and made the decision first. Now you're asking me what opinions I have? It's the first time I've seen such an unreasonable person in the cultivation world." Putting aside Yuan Zhokue's embarrassment, the one who was the most embarrassed was Fuxian Island's Quan Deming. It seemed like he was the one who made the final decision. Quan Deming opened his mouth and said with a bitter smile, "I've been negligent. Yu Qianqiu, you don't have to be calculative. If you have anything to say, you might as well say it. I have to give face to Elder Quan, and I've always been an honest person. I won't beat around the bush. Since that's the case, I'll speak the truth. If there's anything unpleasant in my words, please don't take it to heart." Yu Qianqiu glanced at the various sects and slowly said, "I've already been schemed against before I even arrived. Whether you all admit it or not, it's a fact that everyone is well aware of. I originally came here with a belly full of hot-bloodedness. I wanted to do my utmost for the Chinese cultivation world, even if I had to die 1,000 deaths. But there are deaths that are heavier than a mountain, and there are deaths that are lighter than a goose feather. Dying in battle for the Chinese cultivation world is heavier than a mountain, and dying from being schemed against is lighter than a goose feather. Everyone, you've really disappointed me. Since that's the case, instead of leaving me with lingering fear, it's better to let me continue to do my utmost until my death. I think we wandering cultivators shouldn't be included in this matter. The various sects looked at each other in dismay. It turned out that he just wanted to go it alone. Duan Tianbo looked at Yuan Xueqi, who had just spent a lot of time talking but was now in a daze. He couldn't help but smile. Fight my ass. So what if they won? Quan Deming frowned and said, Yu Qianchou, we're all part of the Cultivation Alliance. Before the war, all sects should obey the unified arrangement. It's not good that you guys aren't included. It's true that all sects should obey the arrangement. But the key is that we're wandering cultivators. We don't belong to any sects, so we naturally don't need to follow the rules of the sections. Yu Qianchou said with some emotion. More than 600 people. We've only just arrived. More than 200 people died in the blink of an eye. If we didn't have some ability to protect ourselves, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to stand and talk right now. Everyone, it's not that we don't want to follow the rules. But the lesson we just learned with the lives of 200 people is unforgettable. 200 dead people were a bunch of reasons, but what about 1,000 dead people? Everyone cursed inwardly, their eyes inadvertently glancing at the Deluo sect, who didn't look happy. You may be wandering cultivators, but since you've already joined the Cultivation Alliance, you should at least do your part. The Cultivation Alliance's budget of spiritual stones. Before Quan Deming could finish, Yu Qianchou waved his hand and interrupted. Elder Quan, don't worry. We wandering cultivators may be weak, but we're the most trustworthy. We'll never take money and not work. Even if we're not in the scope of the overall arrangement, we're still loyal. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. What exactly do you mean? Just say it. Quan Deming didn't want to spa with him anymore. No matter how much he beat around the bush, he wouldn't get anything practical. It's very simple. Yu Qianchou patted his chest and said, We wandering cultivators fight independently and look for opportunities on our own. We don't need to be included in the Cultivation Alliance's overall arrangement for the time being. We'll talk about the overall arrangement after our wounded hearts have calmed down a little. What do you think? All the sects looked at each other, but no one expressed their opinion. They were all wondering how long it would take for their wounded hearts to calm down, especially when it came to looking for opportunities. That was quite unreliable. What if they couldn't find an opportunity? Also, everyone had to pay for the expenses of more than 400 wandering cultivators. The thought of someone taking money without doing any work made no one happy. Although it wasn't a lot, it was still unfair. Quan Deming pondered for a while, then looked at everyone and said, Fuxian Island isn't in a position to make decisions for everyone. I wonder if anyone has any different opinions? At that moment, 100 Charm Demon Lady stood up and said with a smile, I've spent some time with the wandering cultivators, and I'm quite confident in their ability to look for opportunities to fight. Perhaps it's more suitable than our overall arrangement. On behalf of the Pink Sect, I agree that the wandering cultivators fight independently. Of course you agree. Perhaps you've already slept on the same bed with Yu Qianchou. You're a family. All the sects looked at 100 Charm Demon Lady ambiguously. At that moment, the 4 major families naturally wouldn't pass on the responsibility. Bai Shan said in a deep voice, the 4 major families agree. 10,000 demons had their own plans for Yu Qianchou, so they also agreed. Hexapath Demon Sect's Yuan Xueqi looked around and laughed. It seems like my previous thoughts were a little shallow. Since 10,000 demons agree, then Hexapath Demon Sect will also support it. Fuxian Island will listen to everyone's opinions. If anyone has any different opinions, feel free to voice them. Don't let it affect tomorrow's battle, said Quan Deming. Most of the sects remained silent, clearly unwilling to do so. However, no one was willing to offend Yu Qianchou in front of them. This fellow's way of doing things was a little vengeful, and his strength was displayed in front of everyone. There was nothing that couldn't be resolved, so it was best not to provoke him. Everyone expressed their protest with silence. No objection means you agree. Thank you for your understanding and support. Yu Qianchou nodded and turned to Quan Deming with cupped fists. Elder Quan, everyone's opinion is clear. Please make the final announcement. This will give us the right to fight. Everyone's expression twitched. They had never seen someone as shameless as him. Quan Deming looked around in shock and asked in a loud voice, "Are there really no objections from the sects?" He looked around and no one said anything.
He could only smile bitterly and say, "Since no one objects, then let's do it."
He felt embarrassed to say anything, so he could only reply perfunctorily. Yu Qianzhou didn't think much of it. After all, this was what he wanted. He turned around and cupped his fists to thank everyone. However, most of them turned around and left. Who would want this kind of thanks? Chapter 426. The various sects had either left or dispersed. Only a few sects that were friendly with him were still there. Bai Shan came over and saluted. "We knew that Mr. would come with a group of people, so we have already prepared a place for Mr. to stay." Before he could finish, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and smiled. "I appreciate your kindness, but there is no need to go through so much trouble. The flying instrument is more than enough for us to stay." The allure enchantress smiled and thought of the big comfortable bed on the flying instrument. At night, she could open the skylight to look at the night view, and after closing it, it was even more reliable than an iron wall. Naturally, it was safer than ordinary houses. There was one thing that the allure beauty still couldn't understand. She still couldn't see what the flying magic tool was made of, and she couldn't destroy it with her cultivation. She also suspected that it was the nether iron, but when she thought of the huge amount of materials needed to build the flying instrument, she denied this guess. She could not figure it out, but someone else could. Not long after Yu Qianzhou and Zi returned to the flying instrument, a subordinate came to report that the corpse sect's principal elder and 3 consecrators had come to visit. Yu Qianzhou was startled. He had never interacted with the people of the corpse sect, so why were they here? Although he could not figure it out, he still went out to greet them personally. As soon as he came out of the cabin, he saw the 4 people staring at the flying instrument with their mouths slightly open, as if they could not come back to their senses. Yu Qianzhou suddenly understood. He had heard from Wu Sihai that the corpse's god sect had a treasure that was made of dark iron. Of course, the upper echelons of the corpse's god sect were familiar with dark iron. "For seniors, are you here to see me, Yu Qianzhou?" Yu Qianzhou had an idea, but he still asked despite knowing the answer. The 4 people came back to their senses, and one of them came out to return the greeting. "I am Tai Junshan, the external principal of the corpse sect, and these 3 are our consecrators." He then introduced the 3 people to Yu Qianzhou one by one. They were Jiang Huan, Feng Rutian, and Ji Feiming. "Greetings, seniors." Yu Qianzhou cupped his fists, turned around and said with a smile, "I don't even have a place to receive guests here. If the 4 seniors don't mind, why don't you take a seat in the flying mystic instrument?" The 4 of them couldn't wait to go in and take a look. They nodded happily and followed him in. The interior had already been separated by 2 raised panels, and the loose cultivators and the important parts were all blocked. 5 raised chairs were already waiting for the guests. Yu Qianzhou didn't want anyone to see what was going on inside. As the 5 of them sat down, Yu Qianzhou smiled and did not say a word as he watched the 4 of them fumble with the armrests of the seats. He let them slowly touch it to their heart's content and did not disturb them. After a long time, the 4 of them recovered from the shock. After looking at each other, Tai Junshan shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Yu Qianzhou, since you have these flying mystic instruments, you must know what they are made of." Yu Qianzhou leaned against the armrest, crossed his legs, and supported his chin with his hand. He smiled faintly and said, "Of course I know. Senior Tai, if you have anything to say, just say it. I'm used to being honest and not used to beating around the bush." These words made the faces of the 4 of them twitch. Tai Junshan paused and said, "Then I'll say it directly. Yu Qianzhou, if I'm not wrong, these flying mystic instruments of yours are all made of nether iron, right?" "That's right." Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly and signaled him to continue. It said that nether iron can only be found in the legendary Nether Cave. You can only find a small amount in the Nether Cave above the 8th level, but it's impossible to find so much. I don't know where you found so much. Can you tell the corpse sect? Tai Junshan asked with a trace of a pleading tone. Why should I tell you for no reason? Yu Qianzhou slightly frowned. The 3 consecrators of the corpse sect looked at each other. Jiang Huan said, Yu Qianzhou, We won't let you say it for no reason. We will reward you heavily after this. The four of them nodded together. Reward me heavily? Yu Qianzhou's eyes slightly brightened. He sat up straight and said bluntly, "What kind of reward?" Jiang Huan pondered and remembered that this guy had caused a lot of trouble for spirit stones, so he asked, "How about spirit stones? As long as you tell us where you got them, we will reward you heavily with spirit stones." Spirit stones? How much would be appropriate? Yu Qianzhou thought for a while.
In the eyes of these people, he seemed to be a little unmoved, which made them feel that it was not the same as what they had heard.
Jiang Huan suddenly took out a storage pouch and said, "If you can tell us the truth, I have 10 million top-rank spirit stones here. I can pay you in advance. If it turns out that what you said is true, I can give you another 10 million. I will definitely keep my promise." The other two consecrators didn't think much of it, but Tai Junshan frowned and smiled bitterly in his heart. What a generous offer. Giving away 10 million right off the bat, and even promised to follow up. Aren't you a little too impatient? Isn't this letting others know that we are thirsty for knowledge? Of course, he wouldn't say it out loud. However, Tai Junshan felt a little headache. These consecrators hadn't been outside for a long time, so their experience in dealing with external affairs was not as good as his. When he first arrived, he wanted to come alone because bringing 3 consecrators would be too eye-catching. However, the 3 old guys were very anxious and wanted to come with him. As an external manager, how could he refuse? 10 million? Yu Qianzhou was overjoyed. He thought, even if I tell you guys you can't go, it would be a waste not to earn this money. However, when he looked at the storage pouch, his expression didn't change, but his pupils shrank slightly. Subconsciously, he quickly swept his gaze across the faces of these people, and his mind quickly began to calculate. Tai Junshan had already noticed Yu Qianzhou's abnormal reaction. His heart skipped a beat and thought, not good. I'm afraid I'm going to be ripped off. However, to his surprise, Yu Qianzhou gently pushed the storage pouch in front of him back and shook his head. A gentleman loves money, but he gets it in the right way. I, Yu Qianzhou, may not have a good reputation, but I still have a bottom line. I can't just casually say some words to earn your spirit stones. This goes against the way I, Yu Qianzhou, conduct. When he said this, everyone was shocked. 10 million was indeed a lot, but he actually rejected money that was given to him. This was too different from the rumored Yu Qianzhou. Jiang Huan was shocked. Could it be that you're too idle? Did Senior Jiang really think what I said was a joke? Yu Qianzhou shook his head and sighed. He lamented, looks like everyone's misunderstanding of me is not just a little bit deep. A misunderstanding is a misunderstanding. As long as you have a clear conscience, I only earn the money that I should earn. Even if you give me 10 billion spirit stones, I won't take a single one. He rejected the spirit stones that were already in his hands. Coupled with these words, everyone immediately felt a sense of respect for him. Only Tai Junshan asked doubtfully, could it be that you have something that you can't say? Or that you can't easily tell us the place where you can collect nether iron? Those who know what I know are my worries. Those who don't know me are asking for something. Looks like Elder Tai still has some doubts about me. Forget it, I don't need to defend myself anymore. Yu Qianzhou shook his head with a sorrowful expression. He looked around at everyone and said, I can tell you the place where you can collect nether iron, but don't mention the spirit stones again. Otherwise, it would be an insult to me, Yu Qianzhou. There was such a good thing? As everyone looked at each other, Yu Qianzhou said seriously, since Elder Tai knows about the Nether Cave and mentioned the 8 Nether Cave, how could you not know about the 9 Nether Cave? The 9 Nether Cave? Everyone was speechless. Tai Junshan hurriedly asked, it's not that I haven't heard of the 9 Nether Cave, but even if there is such a place, the legends say that it is extremely powerful. I'm afraid that no one can enter, so I didn't mention it. Could it be? Could it be that the nether iron used to make these flying magic tools comes from the 9 Nether Cave? That's right, it is the 9 Nether Cave. Yu Qianzhou nodded. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly. Tai Junshan said in a low voice, you're not joking, right? Rumor has it that the 9 Nether Cave is the passage to the ghost world. It is said that even the legendary soul formation cultivators can't enter it. How could anyone go in and collect nether iron? Humans can't go in, but it doesn't mean that other things can't. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly. Everyone was confused.
Jiang Huan pondered for a while and asked, "The Nine Nether Cave is the passage to the ghost world.
You mean, could it be a ghost cultivator?" Senior Jiang is so knowledgeable. Yu Qianqiu first flattered, then nodded and said, "That's right, a ghost cultivator. Moreover, a ghost cultivator with an extremely high level of cultivation. Normal ghost cultivators can't enter it." Tai Junshan pointed at the flying magic tool and said, "From what you said, could it be that the nether iron used to make these flying magic tools were all collected by ghost cultivators from the Nine Nether Cave? This ghost cultivator with such a high level of cultivation could do this for you?" He clearly didn't quite believe it. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and had his own explanation.
He tilted his body again and stared at Tai Junshan with his hands supporting his chin.
"I remember that the first time I met Elder Tai, it should be during the trial in the demonic ghost region. It seems that ever since that time, the 6 sects never held the trial in the demonic ghost region again." "That's right, we did meet once, but you were still a little disciple of Fuxian Island at that time."
"Who knew that now?"
Tai Junshan shook his head emotionally. The little disciple from back then had achieved something that even he couldn't hope to achieve. His improvement was godly. Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled.
"Haha.
I still remember that many disciples of each sect were captured by a ghost king with extremely powerful cultivation. I racked my brains and spent a lot of effort to finally rescue the disciples of each sect. However, after all these years, how many people still remember my kindness to Yu Qianqiu? On the contrary, I heard many people call me a scum and a madman." Sigh. Human feelings are like flowing water. There are so many fickle people. Let's not talk about them. The disciples of the corpse sect were also rescued back then, and Tai Junshan was one of them. Hearing this, he looked at the 3 consecrators awkwardly. Of course, Jiang, Feng, and Ji also knew about this. After hearing this, they thought about what Yu Qianqiu had done to them back then and thought about what they had done to Yu Qianqiu now. They all sighed and felt that it was indeed everyone who had wronged him first. Jiang Huan nodded silently. "Yu Qianqiu, it's all in the past. You're in the cultivation world now, so you should understand what's going on. There's no need to take it to heart." The 3 corpse sect consecrators looked at him with much gentler gazes, and they gradually let down their guard. Based on their intuition, such a sentimental person couldn't be that bad. Yu Qianqiu raised his brows and sneered. "It's not to the extent of taking it to heart. It's just that those people who scolded me behind my back don't know how to touch their own consciences and ask themselves if they're ashamed or not." As Tai Junshan listened, he was suddenly startled. He thought to himself, "Where are we going in circles? Why are we talking about trivial matters?" He then coughed and said, "Yu Qianqiu, I wonder which ghost cultivator with an extremely high cultivation helped you gather the nether iron. Does our Huaxia cultivation world have such ghost cultivators? If there is, I wonder if you can introduce me to them." The 3rd consecrator also came to a realization. The topic had gone too far and he almost forgot the purpose of this trip. More communication could reduce misunderstandings. Yu Qianqiu smiled knowingly and shook his head. "Elder Tai, didn't I just tell you about that ghost cultivator with an extremely high cultivation? Why are you asking again?" "Did you just say it?" Tai Junshan looked at the 3 consecrators who were also confused. He knew that they probably didn't get it either, so he lowered his head and pondered. He recalled every word that Yu Qianqiu said just now. After a long time, he suddenly raised his head and said in shock, "The ghost cultivator you mentioned is... Are you referring to the ghost king who captured the disciples of the various sects during the trial in the demon ghost region?" The 3 consecrators suddenly came to a realization and exclaimed in unison, "Ghost General!" Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "During the trial in the demon ghost region, I was able to rescue the disciples of the various sects not because of my high cultivation, but because I got along well with the ghost general. Therefore, he gave me some face and let the disciples go. Since I was chased out of Fuxian Island, many people wanted to kill me. There was no place for me in the cultivation world of China. I was forced to take the risk and go to the demon ghost region alone." The few of them looked at each other. No wonder the various sects couldn't find this guy. Even the Daluo sect couldn't find him when they sent people to look for him. It turned out that this guy had hidden in the demon ghost region. Who would go to that place to look for someone? It seemed that this guy had really gone all out to save his own life. Sigh. In terms of friendship, humans are inferior to ghosts. When I returned to the demon ghost region, the ghost general immediately gave me a place to stay. Therefore, I focused on cultivating in the demon ghost region. Finally, my cultivation improved a little. Only then did I dare to come out and take a look. Before I came out, he personally gathered a lot of nether iron for me and asked me to make something for him on the way out.
However, I felt that there was no use for so much nether iron, so I asked the Jing family of the 4 major families to help me make a flying magic tool.
The few of them nodded. So that was the case. Looking at the flying magic tool again, they couldn't help but feel a little heartache. It was really a waste of natural resources to use this thing to make a flying magic tool.
Tai Junshan asked tentatively, "What did the ghost general ask you to make for him?"
Nothing much. He asked me to gather some spirit stones for him to bring back. Yu Qianqiu replied disapprovingly. Chapter 427. What do ghost cultivators need spiritual stones for? Tai Junshan asked in surprise. Although ghost cultivators were rarely seen in the Chinese cultivation world, everyone knew that ghost cultivators needed sufficient yin qi. Spiritual stones were of no use to them at all.
It shouldn't be for him.
Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "I've lived in the demon ghost region for a long time. Although I don't know much about it, I can feel that there seems to be a very powerful person hiding there. The demon kings and the ghost kings seem to be afraid of this person.
If I'm not wrong, the spiritual stones that the ghost general asked me to gather should be for that person." Speaking of this, he suddenly came back to his senses and waved his hand with a smile.
I forgot myself. Look at me, why am I telling you this? The expressions of Tai Junshan and the 3 consecrators were extremely solemn. Yu Qianqiu's words reminded them of the time when Ma Jiugu and several other experts at the end of the Tribulation passing stage were injured together in the demon ghost domain. That incident was very strange. After the corpse sect analyzed it, they once suspected that there was a spirit-severing expert hiding there. Now, not only did Yu Qianqiu's words match some of their guesses, but it also made them believe that there was indeed a top expert hiding in the demon ghost region. They believed that with Yu Qianqiu's position in the Supporting Immortals Island, it was impossible for the Supporting Immortals Island to tell him such a thing. It should be limited to the top officials of the Supporting Immortals Island. From this, it could be inferred that what Yu Qianqiu said was true. However, they didn't know that Yu Qianqiu and Furong had an affair, and Furong's father had already told this prospective son-in-law. In Yu Qianqiu's words, lies had to be half true and half false. That way it would be more credible. If it was all lies, it would be easy to expose it. Of course, it was not good to tell the whole truth. It was called telling the truth, not lying. Yu Qianqiu, is the Joyo Hell Cave in the Demon Ghost region? Tai Junshan asked. Yes, and it's under the Ghost General's Ghost King. Wait.
Yu Qianqiu suddenly looked at them solemnly and said suspiciously, "Judging from your words, could it be that you want to go to the 9th Netherworld cave to dig for nether iron?
If that's the case, I advise everyone to give up on this idea. Let's not talk about the fact that you won't be able to make it to the 9 Netherworld cave. Even if you did, the 9 Netherworld cave is not a place that ordinary people can go to. I only stayed at the entrance of the cave for a while and almost lost my life. It's even more dangerous inside." Tai Junshan looked at the 3 consecrated masters and saw them nod slightly. He then said, "We are not arrogant enough to want to intrude the demon ghost territory. I just want to ask, with your relationship with the Ghost General, can you let him collect more dark iron? The Corpse's God sect is willing to trade with the Ghost General with spirit stones." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, "The Ghost General said that with his cultivation, he wouldn't dare to go in often. He's afraid that something might happen. I can't guarantee that I won't be able to persuade him. Moreover, I'm too embarrassed to ask him to take such a risk." If he had agreed immediately, they might have been a little suspicious. But this refusal made them even more certain that what he said was true. Jiang Huan handed over the storage bag in her hand and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you only need to ask Ghost General. Whether it's done or not, this 10 million is yours." To be honest, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to take this free money, but he still gritted his teeth and refused. No need to pay. After this battle, I can ask Ghost General. As for whether it's done or not, I can't guarantee it. They didn't expect him to refuse money that was given for free under such circumstances. It seemed like the rumors in the cultivation world were a little exaggerated. Yu Qianqiu, are you selling this flying instrument? Tai Junshan touched the armrest of his seat and suddenly asked. The three consecrated were slightly stunned. Then, they nodded slightly and looked at him. F***CK. They're really unscrupulous. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, It's not a question of whether I'm selling it or not, but I can't sell it. Because I've already promised a hidden master that I'll give it to him after using it for a while. He doesn't seem to know what the hell he wants the nether iron for. I'm a very trustworthy person, and I never go back on my word. Oh right, can I ask something? What do you want the nether iron for? Tai Junshan was stunned. He flatly refused and said, This is my sex secret. It's not convenient for me to reveal it. Then he asked, May I know which hidden master also needs the nether iron? Yu Qianqiu sneered in his heart. They kept their own secrets to themselves, but they were so open about other people's secrets. They were really selfish people. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and said, Everyone calls him Mr. Nongzhu. Mr. Nongzhu? They remembered that the foreign cultivators mentioned this person during the saber drawing ceremony. It seemed like he was really an amazing person. Tai Junshan asked again, May I know who this Mr. Nongzhu is, and what does he want the nether iron for? Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. He said coldly, It seems like you're the ones asking and I'm the one answering. Every time I ask a question, you'll just say that it's my sex secret. Don't you think you're asking too much? Forgive me for not sending you off. He immediately turned hostile and asked them to leave. They quickly tried to comfort Yu Qianqiu, but he was too lazy to care. Zhang Huan had no choice but to remind him, Then I'll have to trouble you with Ghost General. I'm a trustworthy person. I'll remember what I've promised. I'm tired. Please leave. Yu Qianqiu asked them to leave again. They had no choice but to leave. However, before they left, Zhang Huan still left the storage pouch behind. This time, Yu Qianqiu didn't refuse. He waited until they were far away before grabbing the storage pouch and tossing it in his hand. He looked at their backs and sneered, Since you want the nether iron, how can a mere 10 or 20 million be enough to get rid of me? Do you really think I'm a beggar? After they left, Ji Feiming sent a telepathic message to Zhang Huan. He's already rejected us a few times. Why did you still give him the money? Zhang Huan replied, I gave it to him in the hope that he'll remember this matter after taking our money. What if he forgets or doesn't look for Ghost General at all? Ji Feiming frowned. That's easy. If he really dares to do that, the corpse sect doesn't mind paying a high price to snatch these flying instruments. Zhang Huan's previously amiable expression instantly turned ferocious. Limitless Island, dozens of miles away from Limitless Palace, in a deep mountain range, there was a waterfall that was almost 100 meters high. In the valley below, there was a clear pond, splashing water everywhere. A stream extended from the pond to the depths of the mountain. Occasionally, birds and beasts could be seen drinking by the stream. The valley was quiet and serene. Not far from the pool, at the foot of a mountain in the valley, there was a cave. It was obviously formed naturally, but it also showed signs of being dug and widened. There were 2 people guarding the entrance of the cave. They kept blocking the third party from entering. Yanbu Gue pestered the entrance of the cave for a long time, but the 2 disciples didn't let him in. In the end, he could only anxiously shout a few times and leave. Not long after Yanbu Gue left, a person slowly walked out of the cave. It was the 7th disciple of Man Hu. He waved his hand at the 2 disciples. The disciple guarding the cave quickly rushed in. After a while, the 2 disciples came out with 2 corpses and quickly disappeared into the mountains. The 7th disciple's face was pale. His arms were faintly trembling. In the end, he simply crossed his arms and blocked the middle of the cave. The steps under his feet were still fresh. Obviously, it had not been long since they were dug. 200 to 300 meters deep into the cave, there was a huge space formed by stalactites. Man Hu and his brothers were guarding the bottleneck of entering the space. The 6th disciple shook his head and said with a bitter smile, The 7th disciple has always been bold. Just now, he pretended to be fine and his legs were slightly trembling. Obviously he was afraid. Man Hu withdrew his gaze from the depths of the cave and sighed.
Killing people is nothing to us. But to bleed tens of thousands of living people, as long as it is a normal person, they will be afraid.
If you are not afraid, you can give it a try. Forget it.
The sixth disciple waved his hand and said, "This is the first time I realized how cowardly I am. After seeing a few more, I don't want to go in anymore. That scene, I am afraid I will never forget it for the rest of my life."
Aren't we committing a sin?
The third disciple, who had his head lowered, suddenly muttered. It was unknown if he was talking to everyone or just talking to himself.
Third disciple.
Man, who walked over, shook his shoulder and said, "Everything is over, there is no need to kill anymore. The blood pool guide is already prepared. It is enough for young Palace Master to awaken the blood in his body into devil blood. At that time, the devil body and devil blood will fuse together. Young Palace Master will be able to cultivate the demonic book with half the effort. We will also be able to complete the taskmaster entrusted to us.
10,000 mortal lives.
The third disciple covered his face with his hands and rubbed it. Man, who patted his shoulder and didn't say anything else. He turned his head and said, "Fourth disciple, think of a way to get a few more nascent soul cultivators in case the young Palace Master needs them.
Why do I feel like I am a human trafficker in the mortal world?"
The fourth disciple shook his head. Man, who raised his leg and kicked his butt. The fourth disciple hurriedly ran out. He has just started cultivating the demonic book, but the process is already so scary. It is hard to imagine what it will be like after he cultivates it. The fifth disciple said as he walked over. He moved his head closer to the group and said softly, "Big senior brother, do you think he will lose his humanity in the end, to the point where he won't even recognize us?"
What nonsense are you talking about?
Man, who pushed the fourth disciple's head away. He subconsciously turned around and looked inside. The others also followed his gaze. The fifth disciple was unrepentant. He moved his head closer and said in a low voice, "Did you guys notice? Ever since the young Palace Master started cultivating the demonic book, his eyes have become colder and colder? I can't see any trace of humanity in his eyes." Nonsense, the young Palace Master is already going to become a demon. He doesn't even want to be a human anymore. What is the point of having humanity? The sixth disciple said sarcastically. Man, who glared at him. Just as he was about to teach him a lesson, a bubbling sound came from inside. However, it was even more sonorous than the sound of a bubble exploding. The echoes in the deep and empty cave made people's hair stand on end. The few of them looked at each other and quickly rushed into the cave.
Chapter 428.
Inside the cave, stalactites formed into stalagmites of all shapes and sizes. Some were thick, some were thin, some were long, some were short, some were exquisite, some were ferocious. A few luminous pearls were placed in conspicuous places, emitting a soft and weak light, making the darkness in the cave even darker. The light in the slightly brighter places seemed a little pale, giving off a strong sense of oppression. In the center of the cave, there was a 5-meter square pool filled with a red liquid. The strong smell of blood, coupled with the bloodstains around the pool, it was not difficult to determine that the red liquid in the pool was blood. At this time, there was an undercurrent slowly surging at the bottom of the blood pool, occasionally producing bubbles. The thousands of giant venomous snake goo that were thrown into the pool were crazily swimming around, seemingly extremely afraid. Unfortunately, the surrounding pool walls were too high. Half of their bodies fell down as soon as they were attached, but they were still desperately climbing, hoping to escape from the blood pool. As the snakes crazily stirred in the blood pool, more and more bubbles emerged, and goo-goo sounds were heard incessantly, gradually resembling boiling water. The venomous snakes that climbed up the walls slowly slid into the blood pool as if they were shedding their skin, but their snake-like bones were still attached to the walls. In the blink of an eye, the walls of the blood pool were filled with ferocious white bones. Not long after, the snake goo that were still wandering around were all dead. The smell of blood became increasingly strong, and a bloody mist slowly rose from the blood pool, spreading throughout the entire underground space. Such an abnormal movement made Man Hu and the other three pale. Only when the red bloody mist covered the entire space did the movement occur again. The bloody mist churned, and as if it had intelligence, it began to condense into countless snake-like long strips that wandered everywhere in the space. Man Hu and the other three looked around, not even daring to breathe loudly. Suddenly, the slithering blood mist red snakes stopped in unison and slowly turned their heads to look at the four of them. Although the four of them had a high cultivation base, they were still horrified by the scene before them. The bloody mist snakes swayed their tails cheerfully, as if they had found their prey. They opened their bloody mouths and swarmed towards the four. The four were greatly alarmed and instantly released their protective aura. Ha! Just as the group of snakes was about to approach the four of them, a muffled warning sound suddenly reverberated in the underground space. No one knew where it came from. The group of snakes instantly stopped in the air, not daring to take another step forward. They seemed to be shivering in the air as they turned their heads to look at the blood pool. Man Hu and the others also looked towards the blood pool with lingering fear. They saw two faint red lights at the bottom of the blood pool. The red light grew brighter and brighter. It was obvious that it was slowly approaching the surface of the blood pool. Hua! First, a head popped out of the blood pool. Then, the whole body slowly rose up. Finally, a bloody person stood motionlessly 2 meters above the blood pool. The demonic red eyes stared coldly at the four of them. Man Hu and the other three could be considered to be experienced and knowledgeable, but after seeing this person, they still couldn't suppress the panic on their faces. He was completely naked and covered in blood. He was so skinny that he looked like a dried-up firewood. His limbs were thin and withered, and the ribs on both sides of his abdomen were like ravines. His long blood-stained hair was scattered and stuck to his narrow cheeks and shoulders. He was simply a dried-up corpse. However, the pair of slowly moving blood-red eyes told the four that he was still alive. Such an appearance was neither human, ghost, demon, nor a dried-up corpse. Could this be the appearance of a devil? Man Hu and the other three looked at each other dumbfoundedly. They naturally knew that this person was the young palace master, Xueqi. However, with such an appearance, how could they go out and meet people in the future? Her. Xueqi's withered arms spread out. His already withered mouth opened, revealing his white teeth. An ear-piercing shriek came from his throat and echoed in the underground space. The blood-mist red snakes were originally shivering and shriveling. But when the ear-piercing shriek came out, they immediately swarmed over as if they heard a summon. Man Hu and the other three's eyes widened and their faces were filled with disbelief. Xueqi's wide-open mouth was like the mother hole of a group of snakes. The blood-mist red snakes couldn't wait to burrow into his mouth one after another. On the other hand, Xueqi's mummified body was gradually swelling up. The blood on his body was also dripping into the blood pool. The disgusting scene made people want to vomit. When the last blood-mist red snake was swallowed, Xueqi closed his mouth. The demonic red light in his eyes gradually disappeared and he returned to a normal person's calmness. Although he was still naked, his full body was like a normal person's. The only difference was that his body was covered in blood. Man Hu and the other three looked at each other. Although they still had lingering fears, they finally heaved a sigh of relief and retracted their aura barrier. Xueqi, who was floating in the air, lowered his head and looked at his body. Suddenly, his figure flashed and he directly flew out of the cave. He can fly in the air. He has already reached the crossing calamity stage. His progress is really fast, as expected of someone who cultivates the demonic book. Man Hu exclaimed. Third brother nodded slightly and said, according to the demonic book, he should now be in the demon general stage. After advancing by leaps and bounds and breaking through to the soul formation stage, he will be in the demon king stage. I wonder what the great demon king stage will be like after that? Bang! Suddenly, a loud sound came from outside. The sound echoed in the cave. The four looked at each other. Don't talk nonsense. Let's go and see what happened. Man Hu waved his hand and the four flew out of the cave. As soon as the four of them came out of the cave, they saw a big hole on the side of the cave opening. There was a crashing sound inside, and they saw seventh brother rushing out with his face covered in dirt. He shouted angrily, "Who attacked us?" He turned around and saw his four senior brothers looking at him in surprise. He was stunned and said, "Did you guys hit me?" The four looked at each other and didn't pay attention to him. They all looked around. After a while, their gazes all focused on the big boulder under the waterfall. They saw Xueqi sitting naked under the waterfall, letting the waterfall hit him. His red body was washed clean. A strong and majestic body welcomed the impact of the waterfall freely. If it wasn't for the fact that they were familiar with his face, they would have thought that they saw the wrong person. Xueqi's body was originally thin and weak.
Now he was so strong. It was unbelievable. After waiting for about an hour, Xueqi fiercely dove into the deep pool. He came out of the water not far away from them. After climbing ashore, he walked towards them naked. His skin was white and tender. It was better than a woman's skin. The four couldn't help but look at Xueqi's lower body again. They saw that his penis seemed to have grown a lot. They couldn't help but secretly click their tongues. This demonic book really had many miraculous effects. Man who threw a storage pouch to Xueqi. He asked with an ugly expression, "Young palace master, did you make a move on my 7th junior brother?" He could endure other things, but he couldn't help but ask about it when he made a move on his junior brother. Xueqi took out some clothes from his storage pouch. As he wore them, he said indifferently, "When I came out earlier, I suddenly saw someone blocking the center of the cave. He didn't look like a guard. I thought it was someone trespassing, so I made a move. When I discovered it was your 7th brother, although it was too late, I still managed to reduce most of the force. Otherwise, he would have been heavily injured even if he didn't die from my little devil fist. How could he still be standing here?" After he wore his clothes, he tidied up his hair and immediately turned back into a refined and handsome young man. He then looked at Manhu indifferently and said, "State Preceptor, don't take it to heart. It was an unintentional move. I don't know the specifics." Manhu awkwardly touched his forehead. Wasn't his master also scared away by that person? Chapter 429. Xueqi glanced at him indifferently. He could roughly guess what was going on, so he didn't linger on this topic. Instead, he said, "I want to find a suitable place to cultivate the raging inferno devil wind, and I need the netherworld fire to refine it. Does State Preceptor know where the 9th netherworld cave is?" The 9 netherworld cavern. The few of them cried out involuntarily. The Marshall brothers looked at each other. "Why? Is there a problem?" Xueqi asked in surprise. Manhu shook his head helplessly. "The 9th netherworld cave is indeed a place, but I advise you not to go there. You should cultivate other techniques first. It won't be too late to go when young palace master's cultivation is successful, or if you drag it out for a few years." Xueqi was puzzled. "Why is that?" "The raging inferno devil wind is an extremely powerful defensive technique. I hope to master it as soon as possible. State Preceptor, are you afraid that I can't enter the 9th netherworld cave?" "Don't worry about that. My demonic body shouldn't be afraid of those external evils." This Manhu hesitated for a moment before he bitterly smiled and said, "Young palace master, I won't hide it from you. The 9th netherworld cave is in the demon domain, and the demon domain is the domain of the madman I mentioned before. It is a forbidden area in the entire cultivation world. Trespassers don't have a good ending." He finally added, "Even soul formation cultivators are no exception." Demon domain? Xueqi was a bit moved. He wasn't afraid of that madman, but he had grown up in the cultivation world, so he naturally heard a lot about the demon domain. It was a place where countless demonic ghosts gathered. It was indeed a forbidden area in the cultivation world. Isn't the demon domain formed naturally? Why is it controlled by someone? No matter how calm Xueqi was, he couldn't help but ask in surprise, "What kind of person is that madman you're talking about?" "The soul formation cultivators are afraid of him, but why are so many demonic ghosts under his control?" Speaking of that madman, the expressions of the senior and junior brothers were indescribable. Manhu said in a deep voice, "This person is known as the world's #1 expert. He's this generation's punishment envoy of the demon domain. His cultivation is unfathomable. There were once 16 soul formation cultivators who joined forces to fight him, but they all died in his hands. Until now, no one in the world is his match. The world's #1 expert." Xueqi mumbled to himself. His eyes immediately turned blood red, and there was clearly a sliver of excitement on his face. After a long time, his eyes returned to normal. He slowly let out a breath and said, "In the future, I must seek guidance from this world's #1 expert. Otherwise, I would have wasted my time in this world." Manhu repeatedly waved his hand and said, "Young palace master, please don't be impulsive. This person's cultivation has already exceeded the scope of a deity transformation expert. Although the young palace lord had cultivated the demonic book, she had yet to master it. With young palace master's current cultivation, I'm afraid you won't even be able to last half a move against him. You must not act blindly without thinking. Yan Xueqi smiled and shook his head. Although I'm confident that I can meet him in the future, it's not now. I'm not that arrogant. The few of them heaved a sigh of relief, but then they heard him say, since it's not convenient for us to cultivate the great body protection technique for now, we'll have to first forge a suitable transcendent artifact. In the demonic book, there's a transcendent artifact called the bloodthirsty demon blade. However, I don't know where to find the materials to forge it. I suspect that it's the bloodthirsty pearl of the demon blood palace. Does the state preceptor have a way to help me obtain it? That's not a problem. As long as the Chinese cultivation world is defeated, the bloodthirsty pearl will be easily obtained. Man Hu nodded. I've been in seclusion for many days. I wonder how the war is going? Let's return to the limitless palace. Yan Xueqi called out to the few of them and quickly flew towards the limitless palace. In the limitless palace, cultivators from various countries could be seen everywhere. However, everyone seemed to not care about Palace Master Yan Bugue. They casually discussed with each other and made a decision. Although Yan Bugue was sitting in the middle, he was obviously left to the side. Nothing required his consent. After Yan Xueqi and the others arrived, they strode into the palace. Man Hu and his senior brothers followed closely behind him. They looked exactly like Yan Xueqi's subordinates. The cultivators from various countries were slightly shocked. They discovered that Yan Xueqi's cultivation had actually reached the early stage of tribulation passing. His cultivation speed was too fast. Seeing his son return, Yan Bugue immediately became spirited. Man Hu and the others were his son's hardcore followers. With their arrival, things would be easier. However, he immediately displayed the dignity of a father and said in a deep voice, I wanted to see you, but I was stopped time and time again. What is the meaning of this? Yan Xueqi glanced at Man Hu and the others. He bowed and said, Father, please forgive me. I'm at a crucial point in my cultivation. I really can't be disturbed. That's why I refuse to let anyone in. That's right. I heard that father was going to fetch mother and sister. I wonder how things are going? After he said that, a few sneers came from the surroundings. Yan Xueqi suddenly looked back and a pair of cold and emotionless eyes immediately suppressed the sneers. He then turned back and asked, Father, did something happen? Yan Bugue slowly told him what happened that day. When he talked about Yu Qianqiu's attack, his expression was as if he wanted to skin him alive. That's true. If it wasn't for Yu Qianqiu's interference, Bai Hua Fairy and Yan Zixia would have already been kidnapped to Everlasting Island. Yu Qianqiu again? From father's words, it seems that Yu Qianqiu purposely let father go. Yan Xueqi frowned as he said that, as if he couldn't understand why Yu Qianqiu would do that. Then he turned around and looked at the old man in brocade robe. He said indifferently, Senior Chong, you dare to take my mother and sister hostage? The old man in brocade robe was also shocked by his cold eyes. But he wasn't afraid of Yan Xueqi. He stroked his beard and smiled. I was forced to do that. If I didn't do that, I'm afraid your father and I wouldn't be able to return. Yan Xueqi, hearing you say that, do you think I did something wrong? What do you think? Yan Xueqi asked expressionlessly. The old man in brocade robe squinted his eyes as he looked at Man Hu and the others. One of the disciples next to him sneered, You really don't know what's good for you. No wonder you became a stray dog. Look at my eyes. Yan Xueqi suddenly shouted coldly at the disciple who spoke. His eyes suddenly turned into a demonic blood-red color, and there was a faint red glow in them. The people in front of him subconsciously stared at his eyes and instantly felt their minds go blank. The disciple's expression was even more sluggish. Taking advantage of the moment when everyone was in a daze, Yan Xueqi immediately turned into a phantom and disappeared. The old man in brocade robe had a high cultivation, so he was the first to wake up. He shouted, You dare! And fiercely reached out his claw to grab the phantom. But the phantom returned as fast as it came. Everyone was awakened by his shout. They saw that the disciple next to him didn't even make a sound before he fell straight down. There was a big hole in his abdomen, and blood flowed out non-stop. Everyone was shocked. When they turned around to look at Yan Xueqi, they saw that he was holding a fist-sized phantom of an infant in his blood-stained hand. He stuffed it into his mouth and swallowed it with a gulp. Such a disgusting scene of swallowing an infant made everyone feel nauseous. Yan Bugue was initially excited by his son's agile skills, but who knew that he would see such a scene? His face instantly turned pale. Swallowing a nascent soul. Everyone immediately had the same thought. The old man in brocade robe was also shocked. He immediately pointed his finger and shouted, "Evildoer!" As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flashed. Yan Xueqi lightly floated backwards. Man Hu and the others did not hesitate to block in front of him. Man Hu pushed his palm and shouted, "Chong Man Dong, stop! Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." The old man in brocade robe, Chong Man Dong, also knew that he wasn't a match for them. After stopping, he pointed at them and said, "I was wondering why I kept seeing cultivators' corpses floating on the sea. All of them either had their nascent soul or their core formation removed. I was puzzled. So it was all done by this evildoer. Man Hu, what are you guys doing?" Yan Xueqi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sneered, "If you dare to speak rudely again, I don't mind taking out your nascent soul to have a taste." The group of people in the hall looked at each other. This was the first time they saw someone swallow a nascent soul. Yan Bugue was already so shocked that he couldn't speak. Man Hu turned around and cupped his hands. "Young palace master, please calm down. Brother Chang's cultivation is profound. It will only be beneficial for us to attack the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance." "Haha, good." Chong Mandong was so angry that he laughed. "Man Hu, from what you said, do you think I'm not a match for this evildoer?" "Brother Chong, don't misunderstand. I just don't want everyone to." Before Man Hu could finish, there was a sudden dong 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 sound of alarm coming from outside. Everyone's expression changed. A person flashed into the hall and reported to everyone, "A large number of cultivators are quickly approaching our Wuji Island. It should be the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance. They want to launch a large-scale attack on us." There was no need to say anything more. This was related to everyone's interests. Everyone in the hall almost instantly flashed out, leaving only the old man in brocade robe, Man Hu and the others facing each other. Man Hu immediately said, "Brother Chong, the overall situation is more important. Don't forget your master's instructions." Yan Xueqi, "I'll settle this score with you later." Chong Mandong waved his sleeve and disappeared from the hall. Yan Xueqi sneered. Together with Man Hu and the others, they flashed to the outside of the palace and looked over. From the north, they saw a black mass of people blotting out the sky and covering the earth. In an instant, countless people from Limitless Island rose into the sky and quickly went to meet the invading enemies. Suddenly, light flashed in the distant sky and the sound of fighting could be heard. In the sky, not too far away from the group battle, 4 flying artifacts stood side by side. One of them had its front and back cover opened. There were a lot of coconuts piled up on the back cabin. It couldn't be helped. There were a lot of coconuts near the sea. Yu Qianqiu held a coconut in his hands, and a black flaming flying sword flashed out. It immediately cut a hole in the coconut, and he casually took out a hollow stalk of rice and inserted it into the hole. Just as he was about to eat it, he saw Zi bring over a large coconut, swapping it with the one in his hands. Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled. He saw Zi standing at the transparent crystal window and watching the battle in the distance. She held a coconut and opened her mouth to sip on the coconut juice in satisfaction. Yu Qianqiu helplessly shook his head and made another coconut. He held the coconut and stood by the window to watch the battle with Zi. Chapter 430. The confrontation was very fierce. It had only just begun, but it had already reached its climax. But it made sense. Everyone was fighting with their lives on the line, and no one would show mercy. The vibrating brilliance was as gorgeous as fireworks. Violent explosions, angry shouts, and miserable screams rang out incessantly. From time to time, people would fall into the sea. The late-stage tribulation passing experts from both sides had already found their respective opponents. In order not to harm their own people, they automatically climbed into the clouds and fought to their heart's content. The nascent soul cultivators were in the middle, while the core formation cultivators were at the bottom. As for the Foundation establishment cultivators, neither side had any in their lineup. In such a chaotic battle, the Foundation establishment cultivators were simply courting death. In any case, both sides had found their corresponding opponents. After all, those with low cultivation levels wouldn't fight with experts. However, when comparing the strength of both sides, it seemed that Xueqi Island had a lot more late-stage Tribulation passing experts. From time to time there would be 2 against 1. As for the other levels, there were more from the Xueqi Cultivation Alliance. For example, there were 5 or 6 people from the Cultivation Alliance fighting against one core formation cultivator. The more they fought, the more courageous they became. Yu Qianqiu hugged a coconut and shook his head. Too despicable. Suddenly, his eyes widened. He saw a small group from the Cultivation Alliance killing several people in a row. They were probably addicted to winning every battle and couldn't find an opponent, so they rushed forward. On the Xueqi Island side, there was a nascent soul cultivator who was at a disadvantage. He was accidentally killed by 5 or 6 people. This time, the arrogance of these few fellows was boundless. They roared as they rushed towards the group of nascent soul stage cultivators who were fighting. Suddenly, a few flying swords shot over and strangled them. 5 or 6 people didn't even have a chance to resist. They turned into dozens of pieces of meat and fell into the sea to feed the fish. Impulsive. Impulsive is the devil. Yu Qianqiu shook his head. Sighing, he bit down on the stalk of rice and sucked it dry. When he found it was empty, he stuffed it into his bag of holding and burped. Then he picked himself up from the ground and continued to watch the show. The situation of the battle was really intense. People died almost every second. Almost none of the cultivators who fell into the sea could get up again. The Cultivation Alliance was well prepared, but they had overestimated themselves. Since the other party dared to cause trouble in the Xueqi cultivation world, they would naturally not be too shabby. From the looks of it, it was almost impossible to annihilate the other party in one fell swoop. Aren't we looking for a chance to fight? When are we going to act? Purple Dress turned around and asked. She might have also noticed that the situation of the Cultivation Alliance was not very optimistic. Who said that? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Purple Dress was also stunned. She said, "Didn't you say that independent cultivators were not included in the overall plan and had to find opportunities to fight independently?" I didn't say that. I forgot. Yu Qianqiu turned his head away and stuffed the straw into his mouth. You said it before. I heard it with my own ears. Ze became serious. This girl was really stubborn. Did she really want me to admit that I didn't say anything? Yu Qianqiu turned around and rolled his eyes. Are you stupid? Let me ask you. Do you know why the major sects pulled out so many people to fight to the death? To resist the invasion of the foreign cultivators. Logically speaking, Ze had always been at a disadvantage in front of him. When she said this, her tone seemed to be a little uncertain. Then why do they want to resist the invasion of the foreign cultivators? Yu Qianqiu asked patiently. It should be to protect their own sects. Ze thought about it and replied. That's right. They want to protect their own sections. To be more precise, they want to protect their own interests. Yu Qianqiu slapped his thigh and praised. He then said very seriously, Xueqi has their sects, territories, their disciples, and their spirit stone mines. To prevent these from being invaded, they have to fight to the death. What about us? We have nothing. Even if we help them win, they still won't give us anything. No one will say anything about you. So, we have to ensure our own safety first. Then what about the thing that Elder Bai asked us to do? Ze frowned. Let's think about it for a long time. Even my master is not worried. Why are you worried? Yu Qianqiu pointed at Xueqi Island in the distance and said, That place is very quiet. There are no signs of disturbance. If I'm not wrong, there should be many people on Xueqi Island. They haven't shown their full strength yet. If we do this, how are we going to explain to the Cultivation Alliance? Ze was a little worried. Explain my ass. Yu Qianqiu sneered. I said wait for an opportunity. I didn't say for sure. Are we just going to watch the show? Ze asked. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and sneered. Who said I'm just going to watch the show? I don't have the time to do that. Take this. He stuffed the coconut in his hand into Ziyi's hand. He opened the cabin door and waved to call the first team leader over. Get a flying instrument and land on the sea. Tell a few dozen brothers to dive into the sea. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the sea below the battle and said, dive there and pick up all the storage bags that fell into the sea. Damn it! These people are dying like rain. There are a lot of storage bags. We might be able to get some money. Yes. The first team leader turned around. Yu Qianqiu shouted again. Wait! Tell them to stay in the sea and don't show their heads. Split into 2 groups and take turns. When the battle is over, we will retreat immediately. If you see anyone alive in the sea, kill them immediately. Remember, don't leave anyone alive. Even if they are dead, give me a few stabs. Don't let anyone find out. It won't be good if people know that we're making a fortune from the dead. Understood. The first team leader immediately went to make the arrangements. Not long after, a flying artifact landed on the surface of the sea, and dozens of people sneaked into the sea. More deaths. It's best if more experts die. They have a lot of money in their storage bags. Yu Qianqiu looked at the battle and muttered. He took back the coconut from Ziyi's hands and smacked his lips. Ziyi looked at him with a dumbfounded expression. She didn't think that this man would even kill dead people to earn money. Lu Qing and Niu Sen floated in the air. As the supervisors of the righteous and demonic sects, they didn't need to take action. They only needed to observe the situation. However, the battle situation was beyond their expectations. The enemy had more late-stage tribulation transcending experts than they did. Once the peak experts were defeated, the battle was basically over. Low-level cultivators couldn't resist the attacks of late-stage tribulation transcending experts. The two turned around to look at Yu Qianqiu. There was no movement from him. It seemed that they couldn't count on him. The two looked at each other and Niu Sen said, we underestimated the enemy's strength. It is impossible to eliminate them in one fell swoop. This is not the way to go. We need to gather the people from the east and south. After we deal a heavy blow to the enemy, we need to quickly retreat and regroup. Okay. You send a sound transmission to Yuan Xueqi. I will inform Duan Tianbua. After Lu Qing said that, the two immediately used their powerful cultivation to send sound transmission to the 2 directions to call for help. On the observation deck of Limitless Palace, Yan Zhuixing, Man Hu, and a few other disciples gathered together as they watched the fight. Man Hu glanced at the island and coldly snorted. It seems that the cultivators of the various countries are still holding back. Yan Zhuixing looked back at him with a profound gaze, as if saying, you are also the same. Man Hu saw his gaze and immediately explained, young palace master, please don't misunderstand. To us you are the most important. We must leave behind a considerable amount of strength to protect you. If anything were to happen to you, we brothers would not be able to answer to our master. Yan Zhuixing said, I have never met the Imperial Preceptor's master. Why is he so fond of me? Young palace master, please don't ask any more. Once you have mastered the demonic book, you will naturally understand. Most importantly, we have absolutely no ill intentions towards young palace master. If young palace master does not believe us, I can make a poison oath. Man Hu said sincerely. Yan Zhuixing did not linger on this topic, nor did he make him make any poison oath. When he looked into the distance, his pupils suddenly shrank. His eyes suddenly turned demonic red as he stared at one place. Man Hu and the others noticed his abnormality. They followed his gaze and saw a few faint black spots in the distance. However, they could not see clearly what they were. They could not help but ask, young palace master's demonic eye is extraordinary. Can you see what it is? Yan Zhuixing looked for a while and the red light in his eyes disappeared. He said, it is 3 strange flying artifacts. However, there has been no movement. Could it be that the Cultivation Alliance has reinforcements? Man Hu frowned. Let's go and take a look. Yan Zhuixing's figure flashed. He had already rushed out of the watchtower and flew quickly. Young palace master, it is dangerous. Man Hu anxiously shouted. However, the other party did not care. The 6 of them immediately flashed and followed. Yan Zhuixing took the lead. They did not avoid the cultivators from both sides. The 7 of them rushed straight into the middle area of the battlefield. If someone tried to stop them, Yan Xueqi did not say a word. He punched out. A black aura burst out in an instant and immediately shook the person who tried to stop him. The person who was punched was blown into pieces, scaring the people around. The movements of the 7 cultivators immediately attracted the attention of Lu Qing and Niu Sen, who were supervising the battle. At first, they thought that the 7 cultivators were coming for them. Just as they were about to face them, however, the 7 cultivators simply flew past them and headed towards Yu Qianchou. "Where are you going?" Niu Sen shouted. Just as he was about to chase after them, he felt his arm tighten. Lu Qing shook his head and said, "It is not good for us to call. Let them invite Yu Qianchou and the others out. Since we are already here, how can we just watch from the side? It is a bit unreasonable." Yu Qianchou, who was hiding in the flying artifact, was rubbing his round belly and burping comfortably. Zi, who was at the side, warned, "Someone is coming for us. We are the peace first. Why are they coming for us? Who would be so bored?" Yu Qianchou looked over and saw 7 figures appearing in an instant. They were floating outside the transparent crystal window and looking at him. Yan Xueqi and the others saw the 2 transparent big guys from afar. They did not know that the people inside were old acquaintances. They immediately looked at each other. Chapter 431. Neither of them expected it to be the other. Yan Xueqi didn't expect Yu Qianchou to be sitting in this strange fellow and watching the show. He seemed to be very relaxed and was even holding a coconut in his hand. Yu Qianchou was even more surprised. He didn't expect this fellow to be able to fly. This required at least a Tribulation initial stage cultivation to be able to do so. Damn it! I thought my cultivation had increased very quickly. I didn't expect there to be someone even more abnormal. Yu Qianchou looked at Yan Xueqi's feet again and again. He really didn't see any flying artifact under Yan Xueqi's feet. In addition, he couldn't see through Yan Xueqi's cultivation at all. He had no choice but to accept the conclusion that Yan Xueqi was stronger than him. I am really overjoyed to be able to see Brother Yu here. Could it be that Brother Yu isn't willing to come out and have a chat? Yan Xueqi's face revealed a sincere smile. It couldn't be described as sincere. It should be described as happy. It seemed like he was about to get his wish fulfilled. When Man Hu and the others saw Yu Qianchou, they immediately thought about how their second brother had died in the blade drawing event. The anger on their faces couldn't be concealed even if they wanted to. It was as if they wanted to vent the hatred in their hearts. In addition, they received a message from their master. They didn't have to worry about Zi anymore. This made them even more determined to take revenge. Damn it! What kind of crappy aircraft is this? Its soundproofing is actually so bad. Yu Qianchou awkwardly waved his hand at them and said, "Brother Yan, please wait for a moment. I will be right there." He quickly walked outside and waved his hand to summon a team leader. He whispered into his ear, "A strong enemy has arrived. Immediately inform the other 3 flying artifacts to close all the hatches. Inform the people in the sea to temporarily hide in the sea. It won't be long before the reinforcements from the Huaxia Alliance arrive. We will be safe then." "Mr. We are willing to go out and fight," a team leader pleaded. It was obvious that he didn't want to be a coward. Zi also nodded her head heavily. She had already taken out a purplish-black bamboo. Her entire body was filled with fighting spirit. "Fight my ass. 2 late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators already cost us 200 brothers. Now, there are 6 late-stage Tribulation Transcendence cultivators outside. If you go out, you'll just die. It depends on the situation." As Yu Qianchou spoke, his expression darkened. "Since when can orders be bargained over? Carry out the order." "Yes." The pair of captains immediately passed down the order. The main mechanism of the 4 flying artifacts was activated almost at the same time. All the cabins and protective shells were tightly shut with a whoosh. Yan Xueqi, Man Hu, and the others were stunned by the movements of the flight-type artifacts in front of them. Needless to say, Yu Qianchou would definitely not come out. It seemed like he had made up his mind to hide inside. The few of them felt like they had been fooled. Yan Xueqi's face was gloomy. He tried to keep his tone calm and said, "Brother Yu, what do you mean? I've heard that you're extremely daring and there's nothing you don't dare to do. Could it be that Brother Yu is afraid of me?" Or is it that you naturally like to bully the weak and fear the strong? You're actually trying to goad me into action. This is a trick that I won't play anymore after I get tired of it. Yu Qianqiu revealed a mocking expression. He patted the wall made of nether iron, creating a few muffled sounds. He looked around and nodded in satisfaction. He wobbled back to the rear cabin and jumped onto the bed. He laid on his side and propped his head up with one hand. He smiled proudly and said, "Brother Yan, you are wrong. Back then, Brother Yan and I were like old friends at first sight, so we addressed each other as brothers. How could I be afraid of you? It's just that Brother Yan's cultivation has increased by leaps and bounds. I want to test Brother Yan to see if Brother Yan can open my flight-type artifacts. I have no other intentions." Yan Xueqing's expression twitched. He knew that anything else he said would be nonsense. Yu Qianqiu would definitely not come out. "Shameless!" Man Hu angrily shouted. "Yu Qianqiu, you want to rely on a few flight-type artifacts to protect your life? You're simply delusional." Yu Qianqiu leaned on the bed and grinned, saying, "Brother Yan, you are a refined and cultured person, so why would you get mixed up with a bunch of roaming ruffians? It's truly a pity." AI. "Don't talk nonsense with him. Let's attack together and break it. I want to see where he can hide." Man Hu waved his hand at his junior brothers. They nodded and a cold light flew out from their storage pouches. 6 flying swords flew into the sky. "Brothers, cover your ears," Yu Qianqiu shouted. He took the lead and grabbed a blanket to cover his ears. The others were not stupid. Hearing the words outside, they naturally knew what was going to happen. They all stuffed their index fingers into their ears. The 6 junior brothers pointed their fingers and 6 cold lights shot down like lightning. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The flight-type artifact that was hit by the 6 flying swords was instantly shaken down by 40 to 50 meters. The people inside were shaken to the point that they hit the roof of the cabin and fell down. Yu Qianqiu even bounced up from his bed and rolled a few times on the cabin floor. A pile of coconuts also rolled around. He crawled up and quickly ran back and forth. Finding that the flight-type artifact was fine, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Then he continued to cover his ears. He was already prepared to suffer another blow. Lu Qing and Niu San, who were floating in the air, looked at each other in dismay. They did not expect that Yu Qianqiu would actually hide inside and not come out. It was a bit inconsistent with his arrogant and domineering character. Man Hu and the others chased after the flight-type artifact and looked at it. Their faces were filled with disbelief. They only saw a few slight dents on the surface. The degree of destruction that they had imagined did not appear at all. It was truly beyond their expectations. Old Seven clicked his tongue and said, "Good heavens! What material is this flight-type artifact made of? It is unexpectedly so sturdy and reliable. No wonder this guy would rather hide like a turtle. I don't believe that the 6 of us can't break a flight-type artifact with our cultivation. Let's give it a hard blow." Man Hu called out. The 6 of them grasped their flying swords in their hands. In an instant, 6 huge astral swords appeared in the sky. There was no need for them to call out. The 6 of them exerted their strength at the same time. The 6 huge astral swords whistled as they wildly chopped down. Bang! The sound shook the sky. Even the people who were fighting in the distance were startled. They took a glance at the scene. Seeing that it had nothing to do with them, they continued to fight. The flight-type artifact directly fell to the surface of the sea, creating huge waves. It sank a few meters before rising up again. The people inside the artifact were shaken to the point of staggering. They looked at each other with a bitter smile. This feeling was truly unpleasant. Fortunately, they didn't suffer any injuries due to their cultivation. The few of them chased after the artifact to the surface of the sea to check. Although the attack was strong enough and the dent was a little deeper, it was clearly far from being able to destroy it. They had never heard of such a sturdy flight-type artifact before. Yan Xueqing's expression changed again. He was truly unwilling to let Yu Qianqiu off just like that. However, even with the 6 of them using their full strength, they still couldn't break it open. There was nothing he could do. He couldn't help but laugh out of extreme anger. "Brother Yu, the feeling inside must not be pleasant, right? You really can endure it. Brat, don't jump around. There will be a time when I will deal with you." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and forced a smile. "Brother Yan, You might not know this, but these flight-type artifacts cost a lot. The anti-vibration facilities inside can be said to be unique in the cultivation world. It's a pity that I can't invite Brother Yen to experience it together. Ze, who was shocked to the point that her expression changed slightly, rolled her eyes at him. It was as if she was saying, "You're just trying to impress yourself." Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly at her helplessly and continued. By the way, as brothers, I have something to remind you. You have to be careful. The people who are fighting with you now are just bait. Later, you carefully observe the east and south sides of Wuji Island. A large number of experts from the Cultivation Alliance will take advantage of the emptiness of Wuji Island to massacre Wuji Island. Brother Yen, if you have any relatives, friends or valuables, it's better to move them in advance. Otherwise, it'll be too late to regret it. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Haha. His words made everyone's expression change. For Yen Xueqi, apart from his father, there was also his father and son's assets on Wuji Island. If it was really as Yu Qianqiu said, then it would be a big problem. Man Hu and the rest of the disciples from the Great Snow Mountain were mostly on the island. They were also a little shocked. Although they guessed that what Yu Qianqiu said was a lie, they still looked to the east and west subconsciously. In fact, Yu Qianqiu's words were just speculation, but it was not a wild guess. According to various signs, the Cultivation Alliance was slowly falling into a disadvantageous position. The previous arrogant deployment was obviously no longer effective. Since the people on the east and west sides could not play a role, they must be transferred to support here. Otherwise, it would be a problem for them to retreat here safely. Wuji Island would definitely pursue them and give the Cultivation Alliance a heavy blow. Brother Yu, it seems that you want to send us away. I guess it's not as comfortable as you said. Yen Xueqi thought that he had seen through Yu Qianqiu's trick. He shouted in a deep voice, "State Preceptor, don't be merciful. Continue to fight. Let Brother Yu enjoy it." Bastard! Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. Just as he was about to plug his ears again, he heard someone shouting outside, "Not good! Eldest senior brother, young palace master, look! Damn it! Trying to fool me with such a small trick." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and plugged his ears tightly. Ze was startled, but she had always believed in his judgment. So she plugged her ears as well. It was hard for the people outside to imagine the deafening feeling inside the metal space. Even Ze, who was at the end of the tribulation stage, felt a little overwhelmed. Yen Xueqi, Man Hu, and the others looked in the direction that seventh brother was pointing. Their faces suddenly changed. Looking from afar, they could see dense gray shadows advancing in the east and west direction. Damn it! What this guy said is true. Man Hu looked at the flying artifact that was still swaying on the sea. Brother Yu, thank you for your advice. I will definitely repay you in the future. When Yen Xueqi said this, a ghostly cultivator's baleful aura surged out from his body. It could be seen that not being able to kill Yu Qianqiu made him very angry. However, there was no other way. So, he waved his hand and said, "Return to Limitless Island." The few of them quickly left. Yu Qianqiu waited inside for a while. Seeing that there was no movement, he quietly loosened his ears. He looked left and right with a face full of suspicion. Could it be that these guys really left? He paced back and forth in the cabin. He wanted to release his divine sense to investigate. However, the attribute of the nether metal was too strange. It could block divine sense. The people outside were unable to investigate the inside, and the people inside were also unable to investigate the outside. After waiting for a while, there was still no movement. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and made a judgment in his heart. It was impossible for Yen Xueqi and the others to waste time with him at this time. He walked out of the cabin and looked at everyone. Then, he carefully opened a small window and looked outside. Just as he expected, there was a large number of people rushing over from the east and south. Yu Qianqiu immediately clapped his hands and laughed. "It's all right. Let's go up. Inform the people in the sea to continue. Tell them that a large number of storage bags will fall down soon. However, tell them to be prepared to retreat at any time. This battle won't last long." The flying artifact rose into the sky again. The protective shell at the back of the cabin opened up again. Yu Qianchou lifted his leg and hooked a coconut. After casually taking care of it, he continued to watch the show with great interest. Ziyi looked at the situation outside and looked at him with a face full of surprise. She asked, "How did you know that people from the east and south would come?" Yu Qianchou raised his hand and pointed at his head. He said arrogantly, "Brain. It's because of my brain. Now you understand why my master gave me such an important mission, right? That's why you should listen to me." Ziyi pouted but didn't refute. She turned her head and looked at the intense battle in the distance. Yan Zhuixing's group of 7 quickly rushed through the battlefield. Man Hu shouted, "Everyone, the enemy has sent a large number of reinforcements. You must inform all the people on the island to fight." Actually, there was no need for him to say it. Everyone had already noticed it. There was a long whistle in the sky. Countless people immediately flew up from Wuji Island. A flying sword flew towards the flying Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing let out a sharp cry. His hands were suddenly enveloped by 2 balls of black mist. His claws were like a phantom as he grabbed the flying sword. He clenched his hands together and an ear-piercing creaking sound could be heard. The flying sword was immediately twisted into a ball and was casually thrown away. Although the person who released the flying sword was in the nascent soul realm, he was also shocked and tried to escape. However, Yan Zhuixing's figure flickered and immediately caught up. He stabbed his claw into the cultivator's back and carried him away. When Yan Zhuixing threw him away, the cultivator was already a dried corpse falling into the sea. The surrounding people were so shocked by this strange and terrifying attack that no one dared to get close, including the people from Everlasting Island. They looked at each other in shock, not expecting Yan Zhuixing to be so powerful. They all made way for the 7 of them, allowing them to quickly fly towards Everlasting Island. Yuan Jiuque and Duan Tianbo obviously didn't expect such a situation to occur. If their main force was crippled, what would happen? Therefore, when the people from Wuji Island came to stop them, they didn't get entangled. They directly ordered the experts in the late stage of Tribulation passing stage to quickly rescue them. Most of the experts immediately escaped and rushed to the main battlefield. It was a pity that those small sects couldn't get away for a while. They had no choice but to play the role of blocking and delaying. There was no need to describe their miserable ending. With the arrival of dozens of experts in the late stage of Tribulation passing stage, the situation of the fight at the top immediately changed. The Cultivation Alliance immediately counterattacked. Chong Mandong, the old man in embroidered clothes, suddenly heard a shrill scream coming from behind him. He looked back and saw a cultivator who was guarding behind him being attacked by 3 experts in the late stage of Tribulation passing stage. The cultivator was accidentally cut in half at the waist. Chong Mandong immediately cried out in grief, "Junior Marshal Brother Qiu." 4 of his fellow disciples came, but now 2 of them were dead. How could he explain this to his master? However, after the 3 experts in the late stage of Tribulation passing stage killed Chong Mandong's junior martial brother, they immediately rushed towards him. Chong Mandong was shocked. He couldn't care less about his grief. He turned around and desperately fought off the entangled opponents, then forcibly flew into the sky and escaped. Chapter 432. After the man surnamed Xiu was killed, as soon as he fell into the sea, someone immediately dragged his body into the water, and the storage bag at his waist was instantly taken away. A group of special forces in the early stage of Tribulation passing could easily hold their breath in the water for 2 to 4 hours. It was a clean and neat job. But at this moment, a group of special forces received the order to retreat, so they quickly retreated through the blood-stained seawater, rushed into the blue sea, and quickly washed themselves clean. The flying artifact that was waiting for them on the surface of the sea opened a hatch with its back facing the direction of the battle. Dozens of people sneakily flashed back again. The hatch closed, and the flying artifact quickly rose into the sky. Ziyi looked at the movement below, and then looked at the sea where people were still falling. She wondered, "We should still be able to collect a lot of storage bags. Why did you ask them to retreat?" Next to him, Captain One also nodded slightly, expressing the same doubt. Yu Qianchou smiled slightly and said, "If we continue to fight, we will lose 800 men to kill 1,000 of the enemy. Which sect in the Cultivation Alliance is willing to do this? I believe it won't be long before they retreat. By then, our people will still be down there, and we will become the target of Wuji Island's anger. Going too far is as bad as not going far enough. Captain 1 ordered us to retreat. Let's go back to Wanghai town first.
The order was passed down, and the 4 flying artifacts quickly rose into the sky and flew back to the west.
Not long after they left, the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance was indeed fighting and retreating, while Wuji Island was in hot pursuit. However, when they were close to Wanghai town, they finally retreated unwillingly. After all, they were close to the enemy's base camp, and it would be bad if they were ambushed. As soon as the 4 flying artifacts returned, Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi immediately came out and went to the cabin of another ship. They saw several piles of storage bags on the cabin board. Ziyi's eyes lit up, while Yu Qianqiu rubbed his hands excitedly and asked, "How many storage bags are there?"
Captain 2 replied, "About 3,000.
In that case, at least 3,000 people died in the battle between the two sides. Hee. Not bad. Yu Qianqiu smiled and waved his hand. Send a few people to stand guard outside, and close the cabin door. Don't let anyone get close. Categorize the items inside and don't mix them up. Let's see what we got this time. Alright, put the spirit stones in different grades, don't mix them together." With a wave of his hand, a dozen or so people immediately surrounded each pile of storage bags. Each of them picked up the storage bags and quickly sorted out the things inside. Immediately, the dazzling sound of spirit stones clattered incessantly. All kinds of bottles containing medicinal pills also clattered and collided with each other. There were also many magic tools in a mess. When the people of Everlasting Island returned to the sea region where the fierce battle took place, the cultivators of various countries immediately sent many people to the sea to salvage the storage bags of their cultivators. As for the storage bags of the cultivators of the Chinese cultivation world, they would naturally belong to whoever found them. Chong Mandong of the 2, a nation impatiently gathered all the disciples around him. Even he himself quickly dived into the sea, roughly at the spot where his junior brother had fallen into the sea. The cultivators of various countries looked at him with some surprise. Chong Mandong's actions were somewhat puzzling. So many people stopped in the air and didn't return. However, they didn't know that the storage bag on Chong Mandong's junior brother contained a very important item. Furthermore, there were a large number of spirit stones inside. Chong Mandong definitely couldn't let it fall into the hands of others. Because the smell of blood was too strong, it had already attracted countless sharks. Chong Mandong casually killed 7 or 8 of them the moment he entered the sea. Fortunately, the sea here wasn't too deep, and the seawater was already filled with blood. The line of sight was still good. After a few dozen meters, they reached the bottom of the sea. At this time, there were corpses everywhere, attracting all kinds of carnivores in the sea. After a group of people dived into the sea to search, they were immediately shocked to find that the storage bags on almost everyone's waist were gone. Only a small number of corpses could still be seen. Chong Mandong's heart immediately sank. He sent a voice transmission to the people of his sect to find his junior brother's corpse at all costs.
Seeing that there was no harvest, the cultivators of other countries all floated to the sea and reported the strange things that had happened here.
Only Chong Mandong's sect was still searching everywhere. Hard work pays off. In addition, the people of his sect were quite familiar with the appearance of Senior Chiu. Finally, they found the 2 parts of the corpse. Chong Mandong saw that the rope of the storage bag on the waist of the corpse seemed to have been cut by a sharp weapon. It was obviously done by someone. Suddenly, his scalp felt a little numb. After the cultivators of various countries received the report, they were also shocked. Someone actually took advantage of the battle to hide in the sea and reap the benefits. Who did it? It was really puzzling. After the Cultivation Alliance returned from the battle, as soon as they returned to Wanghai town, the important figures of each sect gathered together to discuss the reasons for the defeat this time. Of course, arrogance was the reason that everyone knew, but it was inevitable that they would blame each other. However, the unluckiest ones were the small sections. Not only did they suffer heavy losses, but they also had no right to blame anyone. They could only grit their teeth with ashen faces. After arguing for a long time, they could not come to any conclusion. After a while, everyone felt that something was missing. After thinking about it carefully, they realized that Yu Qianqiu was not there. In this battle, Yu Qianqiu had a power weapon, but he did not make a move. It was really infuriating, and he was immediately condemned by everyone. Under the crowd's agitation, Lu Qing had to shout, Someone, go and invite Yu Qianqiu here. Immediately, a disciple of Fuxian Island received the order and left. They did not know that Yu Qianqiu was immersed in the joy of everyone dying and him becoming rich. He did not have the mood to come here to discuss. Moreover, no one informed him, so he would not take the initiative to come. In the flying instrument, Ze also took the initiative to organize the things in the storage bag with everyone. Suddenly, a team member next to her who was carrying a storage bag exclaimed, "There are quite a lot of spiritual stones in this storage bag. There are more than 50 million superior-grade spiritual stones." Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting at the side waiting for the result, suddenly had his eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, "Ordinary disciples can't carry so much money. It must be an important person. Throw it over and let me see." The team member immediately threw the storage bag over. Yu Qianqiu caught the bag and injected his divine sense into it. He immediately chuckled and said, "Yo! It has the capacity of 3 rooms. TSK, almost 60 million. Which unlucky guy did it? I have to check the things inside to see if there is any identification." In the end, after rummaging through a pile of miscellaneous things, he could not see who it belonged to. However, he was sure that it was definitely not a Huaxia cultivator's. This could be seen from the clothes inside the storage bag. Finally, a medium-sized wooden box inside the storage bag caught Yu Qianqiu's attention. He casually took it out and placed it on the deck. He rubbed his hands and laughed at everyone. "I hope we can find some treasure inside." Everyone laughed and stared curiously at the box. Ze even widened her eyes and approached it cutely. Women were naturally immune to treasure chests and the like. After whetting everyone's appetite, Yu Qianqiu directly opened the lid. When they saw what was inside, everyone's eyes immediately showed disappointment. The box was filled with a pile of jade archives. How could there be any treasure inside? What kind of lousy jade archives were these? Why did they have to put them in a box? Yu Qianqiu had a suspicious look on his face. He reached out and picked up a piece, then injected his divine sense into it to examine it. After looking through it, his expression was slightly stunned. He swept his gaze across everyone, then took out a few more to examine. The more Yu Qianqiu looked, the stranger his expression became. Ziyi's face was filled with curiosity. She moved her pretty face over and squeezed out a smile to flatter him. She asked, "Yu Qianqiu, what is inside?" It seemed that a woman's curiosity was not something a man could compare to. She was actually trying to please Yu Qianqiu just for this. Yu Qianqiu glanced at her, but did not reply. He placed the jade archives back into the box, then released his divine sense to check the number of jade archives in the box. He found that there were 317 of them. He rubbed his chin and thought for a while, then turned his head and asked, "Ze, do you know how many countries there are in this world?" "I heard from my master that there are 319 countries, big and small. Most of them are small countries," Ze replied casually. She then asked, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong with this jade archive?" As she spoke, she took out a jade archive for herself to examine. "You guys continue." Yu Qianqiu instructed his team members, then walked in a circle with his hands behind his back. He frowned and muttered to himself, 319. There are 317 countries here, and 2 are missing. It seems that the problem lies with these 2 missing countries. The items in the box were not treasures, but in the eyes of some people, they were even more precious than that. Every jade archive recorded the detailed topography of a country, as well as a general introduction to the country. For example, the location of the city walls, the population of the city, the arrangement of the military forces, the customs, the conditions of the roads, everything was recorded without missing a single detail. Every single one of these jade archives could be used as a strategic map. What was most surprising was that there were detailed introductions to the cultivation sects in the country. Even the number of spirit stone mines and spirit stone production were recorded. Yu Qianqiu shook his head in amazement. There were more than 300 countries. How long did it take to create all these jade archives? The person who created this must be someone with evil intentions. Needless to say, the person who had the ability to do this must be a cultivation sect. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to have such a clear understanding of the situation in the cultivation world. And here I was wondering what had caused you to go through so much trouble. So it's just a bunch of maps. Ze pouted and casually tossed the jade archives back into the box. A loud clang rang out, startling Yu Qianqiu, who was deep in thought. Under Ziyi's astonished gaze, he took out the jade archives and examined them.
Seeing that they were all fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and said, "My little ancestor Ziyi.
The things in here are all priceless treasures. Do you know how much money you're throwing away if you break even one of them?" His words gave Ze a fright. She asked, slightly embarrassed, "Are they really that valuable?" "Of course. Why would I lie to you?" "Oh right." Yu Qianqiu changed the topic and asked, "Can you remember the names of those 300 countries? My master has traveled to each country and told me about them. However, I don't really remember them."
"I only have a vague impression of them."
Ze was a little embarrassed. But before she could finish speaking, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "It's all right. Take a look at each jade archive and see which 2 countries are missing." Chapter 433. Without another word, Ze immediately picked up the jade archives and examined them one by one. She was very serious, and 2 small wrinkles appeared on her smooth forehead. Yu Qianqiu smiled slightly. It was most reassuring to see a simple-minded person doing such a thing. The cabin door opened, and a member walked in, reporting, "Sir, someone from Supporting Immortal Island is looking for you." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and stared at Ze, who was squatting there, as he casually asked, "What's the matter?" The member replied, "They said that the Cultivation Alliance is looking for you, and they want you to make a trip there." "The Cultivation Alliance is looking for me?" Yu Qianqiu raised his brows and chuckled. With his hands behind his back, he slowly walked out.
Outside, a disciple of Supporting Immortal Island was stopped when he was about 20 meters away from the flying artifact.
"Sir, say no more. The Cultivation Alliance has always looked for me, but good things don't come knocking on their door. Let's go." Yu Qianqiu immediately interrupted him. A flying sword shot out from his sleeve, and he stepped on it, heading toward the Cultivation Alliance. The disciple of Supporting Immortal Island was stunned, but he quickly followed. As soon as he arrived, the various sects' denouncing expressions were clear on their faces. Yu Qianqiu swept his gaze across them, then walked into the crowd expressionlessly. He cupped his fists at the crowd and said, "Everyone, why have you summoned me so urgently? Actually, there's no need to ask. I've never seen the Cultivation Alliance look for me for anything good. Speak. Are you all trying to drown me with your spit, or are you trying to pin a crime on me?" The various sects' idle mouths and their anger were immediately stuck in their throats. Even if they wanted to spit it out, they had to sort it out first. The atmosphere was immediately dampened. Someone from the Luo sect coughed. An old man slowly took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Yu Qianqiu, when the various sects are fighting against external enemies and fighting to the death, why are you lone cultivators hiding at the side and turning a blind eye to it? Do you really not see yourself as a member of the Cultivation Alliance?" "Yeah." An old acquaintance. A smile appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior Su Qianqiu of the Daluo sect." Back then, when the 3 major sects of the righteous and demonic sects were training in the demon domain, Junior met Senior once. After so many years, this Junior has often missed Senior. I didn't think that Senior would still remember this Junior. This is really Junior's honor. The top 3 sects of the Righteous Path and Devil Path are having a trial in the demon domain? The sects who didn't know what was going on all looked at each other inquisitively. Everyone had heard that the top 3 sects of the Orthodox Path and the Devil Path would go to the demon domain to have a competition every few years. The results of the competition had always been kept secret. How did it become a trial? Isn't this a competition? The expressions of the 6 sects involved changed. There was indeed such a thing, but ever since they had been warned by the mysterious expert, the 6 sects had never gone there again. Actually, it wasn't a big deal to say it out loud, but it would definitely affect the prestige of the 6 sects in the righteous and demonic sects. If they encountered people who wanted to sow discord, it would be more or less troublesome. For example, Yu Qianqiu in front of them was an expert at stirring up trouble. The other 5 sects involved all looked at Supporting Immortal Island as if saying that they were all good people from Supporting Immortal Island. Lu Qing of Supporting Immortal Island frowned and said, Yu Qianzhou, if you want to reminisce with Elder Su, now isn't the time. Let's get back to business. It's good that you know the taboo. Yu Qianzhou sneered at Su Qianquan as if saying, "You've reminded me. If you hadn't come out, I would have almost forgotten about this." Actually, he was just giving a warning. Even if he really wanted to sow discord, he wouldn't do it. Some things couldn't be kept a secret. If it was spread out, who would dare to cooperate with him in the future? This was the golden rule that he had learned from his previous life. If it didn't reach the point of life and death, he couldn't make a big deal out of it. That way, there might still be opportunities for cooperation in the future. After all, everyone was in the cultivation world. He couldn't cut off all paths of retreat. Haha. Let's get back to business. After laughing, Yu Qianzhou's expression turned solemn. Elder Su, you've gone too far. We itinerant cultivators have been waiting for an opportunity. How could we just stand by and watch? This is something that everyone can see. Su Qianquan looked at the others as if he wanted them to say something. Just now, because of the conflict between Daluo sect and Yu Qianzhou, he couldn't help but jump out first. In the end, he suffered a loss. Now that Yu Qianzhou had gotten back to business, if he continued to harp on it, he was afraid that Yu Qianzhou would throw caution to the wind. It was better to endure it for now. Did anyone see that I just stood by and watched? That's pure bullshit. Yu Qianzhou looked around and raised his arms as he said loudly, "We itinerant cultivators attracted the attention of 7 Tribulation passing experts from Limitless Island. 6 of them were at the final stage of the Tribulation passing stage. We fought them to the end. Did everyone really not see that? Didn't this reduce the pressure on the sects? If this is considered as standing by and watching, then there's no justice in this world." The sects that had participated in the trial in the Demon Ghost region were temporarily silent. Without the leaders of these 6 sects, the original fiery anger of the crowd was immediately extinguished, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over it. Yu Qianzhou felt proud of himself, secretly praising himself for having achieved the miraculous effect of using 4 tails to overcome 1,000 caddies. As he looked left and right, he suddenly saw the Enchantress of 100 Charms throwing him a meaningful wink. He immediately lowered his head and pretended not to see anything. He was proud, but now he was ready to throw caution to the wind. Just when everyone thought that this matter was going to end, someone in the crowd suddenly shouted, "Yu Qianzhou, don't try to argue. Everyone knows that you didn't intend to fight from the beginning. When the 7 Tribulation passing experts found you, you also hid in the flying magic tool. How dare you say that you fought them to the end? How can you be so shameless?" Everyone was stunned, and their eyes all looked in the direction of the voice. Yu Qianzhou was stunned and thought that there was really someone who was stubborn. He immediately shouted, "Who is it? Who is it? Don't hide behind people's backs and hurt them. If you have the guts, come out and say it." "It's me, the elder of the Imperial Sword Sect, Tu Yanfeng." That person shouted loudly, and the crowd immediately parted to make a path. An old man at the middle stage of the nascent soul realm stepped out angrily and stared at Yu Qianzhou without fear. When the various sects saw that it was him, they were all slightly stunned. A third-rate sect's elder actually dared to go against Yu Qianzhou without changing his name? Could it be that he didn't know that this brat was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance? With Yu Qianzhou's strength, it was a piece of cake for him to flatten the Imperial Sword Sect. After the initial shock, everyone revealed a look of admiration, but then there was a look of mockery in their eyes. There were so many big sects here, so when did a third-rate sect have the right to speak? Yu Qianzhou looked at the person and found that the person's cultivation was similar to his, and he was from an unknown small sect. He was really surprised. When he entered the cultivation world, he joined the Ong Kwang Tsung sect. It could be said that his starting point was quite high. After that, the sects he interacted with were all famous and big sects, and he really didn't have any contact with those small sections. "I have always been in the upper echelon, so when did I offend the Imperial Sword Sect?" Yu Qianzhou scratched his head in confusion, and then he respectfully said, "Elder Tu, I have never met you before. Did I offend you in any way?" "You didn't offend me in any way, but I just can't stand your despicable face. You obviously have your own selfish motives, but you still want to twist words and force logic. I am deeply ashamed to be associated with people like you in the Cultivation Alliance." Tu Yanfeng pointed at Yu Qianzhou's nose and cursed. The crowd was in an uproar, and they all whispered to each other, almost applauding and cheering. Yu Qianzhou's face darkened, and he shouted, Tu Yanfeng, I have no enmity with you, and you dare to insult me in public? Do you think I'm afraid of you just because I don't belong to any sect? You don't have to be afraid of me, and I don't have to be afraid of you. At most I will just die. Tu Yanfeng shouted back tit for tat. In this battle, all the disciples of the Imperial Sword Sect who came with me have died, and I am the only one left. I have no face to go back and face the sect leader. If you don't want to fight, that's your own business, and it's not my place to talk about it. But you are here to argue, and it is simply an insult to the disciples of the Imperial Sword Sect who died in the battle. If I don't scold you, who will? If you are not convinced, do you dare to fight with me? People do not do good, but they all have good thoughts. When all the sects heard what he said, they were all filled with deep veneration, and no one dared to look down on him anymore. But when they thought of Yu Qianzhou's character of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, and Tu Yanfeng's challenge gave him an opportunity, they all sighed in their hearts, and thought that Tu Yanfeng's life was probably over. Yu Qianzhou's mouth was wide open, and he was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he bowed deeply to Tu Yanfeng and said, Senior, you are loyal to the sect, and this junior admires you from the bottom of my heart. I misunderstood you just now. Yu Qianzhou's words were rude, but you misunderstood me too, sigh. Let's not talk about this kind of unspeakable secret. All the sects were stunned, and Tu Yanfeng, who was ready to fight to the death, was even more stunned. The anger that filled his chest had been mostly extinguished. At this moment, everyone clearly saw a humble, respectful, and virtuous junior. He was like a completely different person from the previous Yu Qianzhou. If you really have some unspeakable secret, why don't you say it? If what you said is reasonable, I'll apologize to you in front of everyone, Tu Yanfeng said after being stunned for a moment, and the aggressiveness in his tone was gone. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and said with a bitter smile, Let's not talk about it anymore. If I continue, I'll inevitably be suspected of twisting words and forcing logic. Senior, you have a noble character and unquestionable integrity, and you dare to stand up and argue for what's right, and the loyal disciples of the Imperial Sword School, Yu Qianzhou, can only admire you. Senior, what you said was right. It's a shame to be associated with me, and I'm ashamed to face the loyal disciples of the Imperial Sword School who died in battle. Sigh. If that's the case, Yu Qianzhou, announce in front of everyone that I and a group of rogue cultivators will withdraw from the Cultivation Alliance, and will no longer enjoy the protection of the Cultivation Alliance, as punishment. All the sects were in an uproar, and the four major families were all stunned. The Allure Beauty's eyes were filled with doubt, and her pair of bright eyes looked at Tu Yanfeng from time to time, and then glanced at Yu Qianzhou, thinking to herself, these two fellows seem to have taken the wrong medicine. Could it be that the two of them colluded to put on a show? What the hell is the little fox doing? Tu Yanfeng was dumbfounded. Yu Qianzhou, if you have something to say it, don't be so impulsive. Sigh. My heart is towards the bright moon, but the bright moon shines in the ditch. Senior, you don't have to say any more. Actually, I can see that the Cultivation Alliance has a lot of misunderstandings about me. If that's the case, why should I stay and be hated by others? It's good that I leave. There will always be a place for me, Yu Qianzhou, in this big world. Whether I'm in the Cultivation Alliance or not, I'll support the Chinese cultivation world in the dark. My sincerity can be proven by the sun and the moon. Yu Qianzhou said, a little disheartened. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.